Guoran was with Xiachen. The two of them had their own special space for them to experiment with various odd things. Xiachen was rather bashful and didn't talk too much, but he got along best with Guoran. The two of them never ran out of crazy ideas. Xiachen was in charge of inscribing runes. After all, any formation master also had to be a master inscriber capable of placing runes on objects. Guoran was in charge of the forging. The two of them worked together perfectly and were continuously making many miraculous things to benefit the Dragonblood Legion. However, in the past 2 days, the two of them had stopped their forging and experimenting. They appeared listless. What's going on? Don't tell me that you've run out of money again. Longchen walked in. Boss, you're back. Guoran and Xiachen immediately shot to their feet. Guoran had a mischievous expression, while Xiachen appeared a bit uneasy. Out of money? Longchen could guess what was happening. Whether it was forging items or inscribing runes, they both consumed an endless amount of resources. Actually, that also included alchemy, but refining pills for others resulted in immense profits. When it came to making money, alchemy was the profession that made the most. Of course, that was aside from Longchen's profession of being a bandit. An alchemist like Longchen who had an extremely low chance of failure with his refinements was guaranteed to bring in piles of money. However, in order to raise the Dragonblood Legion, just refining pills wasn't enough. Longchen could make money for himself, but Guoran and Xiachen couldn't because their products were never sold but kept for their own side. Last time, the resources that Longchen had robbed from the Xian Beast's headquarters had mostly been used on building the ancestral land of the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. They had also created several transportation formations. There wasn't much left over. That's the truth. Boss, you also know that I'm weak. I live off my armor. As for Xiachen, he lacks defensive power as well. We just figured out how to build 2 supreme sets of armor, but Guoran's voice trailed off. They cost too much. One is a hard set, while one is a soft set. There's not even close to enough money for them both, said Xiachen. Just how powerful are they? Asked Longchen. This was the real important point. How powerful? Let me put it this way. Boss, if I had that armor, I would be able to challenge you on my own. Guoran laughed confidently, but then he sadly said, the main thing is that there isn't enough money. Are you serious? If it's really so powerful, I'll help you with it, said Longchen. He was slightly surprised by such a high appraisal. Boss, can you really afford it? Asked Guoran. After all, the Dragonblood Legion's armor and weapons had come at a great cost. Longchen still owed Zheng Wenlong a huge amount of money. At that time, Zheng Wenlong had sacrificed a great deal to help Longchen get so much money. He no longer had any means to get more. It was because of this that Guoran and Xiachen were at their wits' end. No matter how great the idea or method, without money, they would just be empty thoughts. Hearing Longchen's tone, it seemed that if they made it attractive enough to him, he would help them fulfill their heart's desire. As long as it's strong enough, there's no need for you to worry about the money, said Longchen. Guoran and Xiachen were both delighted. To give a demonstration, Guoran took out a set of soft armor and had Xiachen wear it. This soft armor was made of countless threads of gold. It was very delicate and exquisite. Longchen couldn't help smiling. Guoran, I didn't expect you to be so skilled in the feminine arts. I, Guoran, am a capable man. Other than having children, I can do everything. Perhaps he had seen hope for the armor he dreamed of. He summoned his own golden armor and suddenly swung his saber at Xiachen's head. Guoran hadn't held back with this slash. If it weren't for Xiachen's calm expression, Longchen would have really thought that Guoran was trying to kill him. Just as Guoran's saber was about to cut through Xiachen's head, golden light exploded out of Xiachen's soft armor, enveloping him. This armor automatically protected its master and was so powerful that it managed to block Guoran's attack. Longchen was amazed. This soft armor actually had the miraculous ability of automatically sensing danger to its master. Just at this moment, the soft armor that Xiachen was wearing slowly dissipated, transforming into a pile of golden sand. After blocking Guoran's full-strength attack, it had lost all its power. Amazing! Using ancestral item materials, You were able to block the attack of a divine item. Truly amazing, praised Longchen. The actual quality of the golden soft armor wasn't high. It wasn't made of divine materials. However, it still managed to block Guoran's full-strength attack. It should be noted that Guoran's current armor was something that most ordinary Empyreans with partially awakened manifestations would not be able to stop. However, this seemingly unremarkable soft armor had managed to block his attack. Boss, you've now personally seen the effect. This prototype was made of low-class materials, or it would have an even greater effect, said Guoran. There should still be leftover materials from when you forged divine items for our brothers. Why not use those? Asked Longchen. Those materials are no good. They're hard but lack flexibility. There's no way to turn them into the soft threads that we need. Other than that, I've discussed this matter with Xiachen for many days, and I feel like the armor and weapons that we made have many flaws. They were all made for maximum offense and defense, and in our pursuit for hardness, we neglected the flexibility of the weapons. With pure hardness, it results in a backlash every time we clash against someone. With a bit of softness mixed into it, we won't lose any power, but there won't be such a backlash, said Guoran. Unfortunately, bringing this up now was clearly too late. The weapons and armor had already been forged. They couldn't be changed. It's only natural that people grow as they test things. You didn't have a master to lead the way, so you could only rely on yourselves. Although you end up suffering more like this, your accumulated experience isn't a bad thing. This way, you don't end up following someone else's footsteps. After all, everyone else's path has an end, but your own path can go wherever you want. Just tell me what kind of material you want to buy, or if you've already found the material, I can buy it for you, said Longchen. This kind of powerful armor couldn't be abandoned just because of a lack of money. Divine materials that have the flexible nature we want are very rare. I've already asked around, and that kind of material is priceless. Some sects have a small amount of it, but they refuse to sell it. As for forging these 2 sets of armor, we'll need quite a bit of it. Just 1 or 2 stockpiles of it won't be enough. That's why I've planned to purchase some divine ore and refine it ourselves. That should save us some money, but even then, the ore is very expensive. At the very least, it will require several billion spirit crystals. Qian Duo has said that we're currently hard-pressed for money though. Guoran couldn't help feeling powerless. At the start, the Dragon Blood Legion's finances had been looked after by Tangwan. Then it had been Qingyu, and then that duty had been passed on to the talented Chang Duo. However, currently the Dragon Blood Legion's expenses were frighteningly great. Just the armor for the 2 of them, even when using the cheapest option of buying the ores and refining it themselves, would require billions of spirit crystals. That was enough to buy a huge sect. Actually, it's fine for me not to have one. It should be Guoran who gets one first. After all, he focuses on the battle, and that armor can raise morale, said Xiachen. You're wrong. Last time, the Bloodkill Hall's assassins set their sights on you. If it weren't for Sister Chu Yao's protection, you would have been in danger, said Guoran. Xiachen's formations were absolutely terrifying, and they possessed amazing killing power. When the battle started, he would always be their first target. There's no need for you to argue. Do 2 men need to be so sappy? I'm telling you, there will definitely be enough money. Let alone 2 sets, even 20 sets would be no problem, said Longchen. His primal chaos space was currently filled with spirit crystals, and he had actually been in the midst of wondering how to spend them. It seemed that there was no need for him to worry about how to spend it though. With Guoran and Xiachen present, the money would always find a way to spend itself. Guoran and Xiachen were delighted. Guoran asked, "Boss, did you go robbing again?" Longchen rolled his eyes. He really detested when people randomly guessed things about him. Well, the main thing was that Guoran had guessed right. That's right. Can you use this thing? Longchen took out a fist-sized rock. This rock emanated fluctuations of divine energy. It was one of the fragments from the divine pillars he had cut down. These fluctuations, is this wind copper divine or? But why does it possess such a terrifying divine energy? Guoran recognized the ore, but he was stunned by the energy within it. This or was able to absorb the spiritual qi in the air, and most large sects had it. It was a useful item for spirit-gathering formations. An excised piece of wind copper would count as a very large piece perfect for the core of a spirit-gathering formation. Smaller sects only had a chunk the size of a bean, while weaker sects might only have a sesame seed speck of wind copper. Wind copper was a very precious divine material. Many sects had it, but only in small quantities. Longchen was holding a fist-sized chunk of this ore. If refined, it should produce a 1-inch wide sphere of wind copper. That was quite valuable. This is good, but it's not even close to enough to pay for everything, said Guoran. Who said that there was only this one piece? Are you saying that as long as there was enough of this, it would work? Asked Longchen. It would, but how much do you have? As long as you have 100 chunks this size, it should be enough to build Xia Chen's armor, said Guoran. The soft armor they had planned to make didn't actually require too many divine materials. The main problem was how taxing it was to inscribe runes onto each and every thread of it. On the other hand, Guoran's hard armor had to cover his entire body, with each piece requiring its own separate formation. Hence, it would cost a lot more. That was why at the very least, Guoran wanted to make the soft armor for Xia Chen. As long as they could make one set of this armor they imagined, it would bring Guoran immense pride, even if he didn't get to wear it. That was the pride of a craftsman. Well then, based on that, I have enough for you to build a set for every member of the Dragonblood Legion, said Longchen. Finding an empty space, Longchen tossed one of the divine pillars onto the ground. Guoran and Xia Chen's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This giant pillar of wind copper divine, or was something they had never dreamed of possessing. It was several miles thick and tens of thousands of meters tall. There's a dragon vein inside the pillar, exclaimed Xia Chen suddenly as he examined it. He immediately found that this was no ordinary wind copper divine ore. Boss, where did you get this? From Pill Valley's secret realm. So, is it usable? There's a dragon vein sealed inside with karmic luck. That's a priceless treasure. If turned into a formation, the power inside it would make the formation extremely terrifying, said Xia Chen. He was unwilling to turn such a treasure into some armor. Xia Chen, no. If you don't have that armor, it won't matter. No matter how terrifying the formation, it won't do anything if you're dead, said Guoran. Xia Chen's defenses were too weak. He had to hide in the dark, but if he was noticed, he would be the main target. I don't know anything about dragon veins or forging around them. The only thing I could suggest is, suddenly, one giant pillar after another crashed onto the ground. Xia Chen and Guoran were dumbfounded. There are so many. There were a total of 108 of these. Being a nice person, I left 2 of them for Pill Valley, but I took the rest. I'll leave you 18 for now. The rest I'm keeping so that Evil Moon and Little Heaven can absorb their energy. You can experiment with refining the wind copper or extracting the dragon vein energy. It's up to you. All I ask is that you work on that armor. Perfect it, and then you can make one set after another. I want the entire Dragonblood Legion to be properly fitted, said Longchen. That, Guoran and Xia Chen exchanged a look. Guoran said, Boss, making this kind of armor takes up a lot of time. It also requires many expensive materials. Since we have the main ingredient here for the soft armor, I'd make a conservative estimate that every set of armor would take 3 to 500 million spirit crystals and also 1 to 2 months to make. We have over 12,000 people in the Dragonblood Legion, and to make one for every person, even if we worked ourselves to death, it would take decades. Longchen smiled. It doesn't need to be so exaggerated. The 2 of you can wear the perfect armor, but the other brothers don't need such high requirements. Just make sure that what you make for them has the maximum offensive and defensive power. Too much assistance wouldn't actually be a good thing. It would make them dependent and influence their cultivation motivation. Also, don't be so rigid in your thinking. For example, some of the initial refining of the wind copper doesn't need to be done by the 2 of you personally. You can get some help, either from the original devil race or from Zheng Wenlong. Our time is more important than saving money, said Longchen. But, did something happen outside? Is it because of that phenomenon? Asked Guoran and Xia Chen. They had been cut off from the outside world for months, and they had been so focused on the armor that they had lost track of time. Longchen said, "I'll tell everyone later. Other than the core techniques, make a list of what kind of aid you need. First, refine the wind copper and start making the armor. After experimenting with it and perfecting it, start creating as many sets as possible. We don't have that much time." Later that day, they gathered the Dragon Blood Legion. Even the warriors that were in seclusion were called out. Gu Yang, Li Qi, Song Mingyuan, and Yu Zifeng were all present. Meng Qi, Chu Yao, Tang Wan'er, and Cloud had also come. Only Lu Ruyan was missing. She was in a critical cultivation moment and couldn't be disturbed. "Brothers, there is something I have to tell you. The current martial heaven continent has changed." Longchen explained what the Qi flow eruption meant, and how powerful ancient sects and families had appeared on the continent. Monsters that had been hibernating for countless years were starting to awaken. The Dragonblood warriors were startled, not having expected so much to have happened while they were in seclusion. So even monsters from the ancient era had sealed themselves to come to their era. It seemed a new era of competition was about to come to the continent. Long Chen's gaze swept over everyone. Empyreans with fully awakened manifestations are now no longer rare. As for ordinary Empyreans, they are as common as dogs, and the geniuses from past eras have now appeared. In fact, they were once so famous that their names were recorded in historical texts. Maybe even some famous cultivation techniques or battle skills were actually made by them. Each and every one of them was the most dazzling figure of their generation. As for the era that we were born in, it is the worst era as we face the arrival of all these monsters. But it is also the best era because we now have company. Otherwise, if we were completely unrivaled, wouldn't it be lonely? I gathered you today to tell you that the times have changed. Don't get lost in your former glory. The time where we destroyed Heavenly Fate Island and crushed the other peak heavenly geniuses is in the past. Now, if you don't want to get trampled by others, you have to possess a higher level of power. Boss, we didn't slack off during this time. We've all been cultivating hard, said Gu Yang. Long Chen waved his hand, saying, I didn't say you were slacking off. Actually, you're all working very hard. Your cultivation bases are advancing with every passing day. However, you are now lacking a certain something, a feeling of crisis. Without that feeling, your cultivation becomes something passive. It just becomes something that you do because the others around you are doing it. You were too outstanding in the last battle and started to feel unrivaled. Perhaps if it weren't for my existence, it would have reached the point that you no longer even felt a desire to cultivate. Now that Long Chen said this, many of the Dragonblood warriors felt ashamed. They truly had gotten lost in their glory from the last battle. After all, they had reached the peak. They were now able to challenge the major powers of the continent. Once they stepped into the Nether Passage realm, wouldn't this world belong to them? They had lost that sensation of crisis. Although they continued working hard, it was just a habit. They weren't actually actively working to get stronger. Boss, we were wrong. Gu Yang was the first to admit his mistake. Long Chen shook his head. You weren't wrong. If I was also at the peak, it would be normal for me to get lazy too. I'm not trying to criticize anyone. It's just a warning that once you are unrivaled, you'll need to find a new target to give yourself motivation. The Great Era is currently reaching its final stage. If you want to be unrivaled, you'll have to become a sovereign. Alright, that's all I have to say about that. Let's go. Aren't there a bunch of hopping clowns at our door? Let's go exercise our muscles. There were two ancient mountains standing guard over the cloud, chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's main gates. These mountains came from their ancestral lands. Rumor was that the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow had possessed a divine totem that they worshipped when they were first born. It was a symbol of the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. In front of the gates were quite a few experts. However, none of them were speaking to each other. It seemed that they were all strangers. These people had already been here for several days. They were experts from the ancient sects and powers that had heard of the Dragonblood Legion's name. These disciples were not the peerless geniuses that had been sealed away, and they weren't qualified to challenge Long Chen. However, since they weren't peerless geniuses, That meant that they could challenge the Dragon Blood warriors. They wanted to know just how strong this rumored number 1 legion was. However, no matter what they shouted, there wasn't the slightest response from within. Through the formation, they could see how busy people were inside. They had shouted for several days and even seen some Dragon Blood warriors. Most of the disciples who had come here simply sneered at the Dragon Blood warriors for a bit before leaving. However, some decided to stay and wait for the Dragon Blood warriors. Either way, they would not barge into the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's territory. If they did, that wouldn't be a challenge but a provocation that would lead to battle. So, they simply continued to stand outside the gates, occasionally throwing out some mocking words. That didn't break any rules. What Dragon Blood Legion? They should call themselves the Turtle Legion. What a waste of time, sneered one expert. He finally lost patience and turned to leave. Just at this moment, the gates began to rumble. The grand formation shook as countless runes spread out, creating a giant gate that opened. A black-robed man slowly walked out, followed by a group of experts that gave off a sharp, sword-like aura. Long Chen! Startled cries rang out. Even these people that had just returned to the martial heaven continent knew Long Chen's name. Although they had never seen him in person, they had looked at photographic jades of him. They immediately became serious. They were not the top experts of their time. Although they also came from powerful backgrounds, in the face of the hegemon of this time, they were still a bit nervous. 3 Empyreans with awakened manifestations. Amazing. Are you the peak experts of your sects? Asked Long Chen. No. We are just disciples born around this time. We are not the geniuses who were sealed, said a man who stood in the air, a sword hanging on his waist. He was a powerful Empyrean whose manifestation had awakened. Although he had yet to summon his manifestation, just standing there, the heavenly Daos seemed to revolve around him. It seems that we came to the wrong place. Who would have thought that the number 1 legion of this current era wouldn't even have a single awakened Empyrean? Said another person. He was a large mustached man whose bare arms were exposed. He was most likely a power-type fighter. This is the martial heaven continent's number 1 legion? What a meaningless title. Longchen, how about you come out? Let me see whether the number 1 expert of the current world deserves his fame, said a thin man. He was extremely tall, and combined with how thin he was, he gave off the impression of a bamboo tree. He was pale like he had never seen sunlight before, and when he spoke, his chillingly white teeth revealed themselves. They had clearly come for the Dragon Blood Legion, but they hadn't expected that there wouldn't be a single awakened Empyrean amongst them. They were disappointed. Without any awakened Empyreans, the Dragon Blood Legion would only be suppressed. They clearly weren't on the same level. Long Chen looked at the slender man and shook his head. Even the corrupt paths people dare to come out so brazenly? Are you really not afraid of me cutting off your head? Long Chen instantly saw through that person's origins. There was no way to conceal the bloody aura emitted by him. He had to have killed countless experts. In truth, both Long Chen and the Dragon Blood warriors also had the blood of countless experts on their hands, but it was the vileness of the corrupt experts that caused endless resentment to gather around them. They even used that resentment to cultivate. It was an extremely evil kind of cultivation. However, in the corrupt path's ideology, the weak could not be classified as humans. The only meaning behind their existence was to serve the strong. So the corrupt path's experts didn't even bother trying to hide their evil air. Ha, Long Chen, you're too arrogant. Do you think this world is the same as before? Do you think you're still unrivaled? Let me tell you, the martial heaven continent has already fallen, and your era is the weakest era. Any genius that was worth sealing in the past has accomplishments far beyond the likes of you. If you wish to live, you had best learn how to walk with your tail between your legs, understood? Sneered the corrupt expert. He didn't feel much fear for Long Chen. Based on your tone, were you also sealed in the past? You aren't from this generation, right? Asked Long Chen. Correct. I am one of Tian Xiezi's 108 guards. All the guards were sealed together with Tian Xiezi. In our time, we dominated the martial heaven continent. Your grandfather had yet to be born at that time, so in front of us, you're all just a bunch of children, laughed the corrupt expert. The Dragon Blood warriors' expressions darkened. Dominated the martial heaven continent. What a joke. If you really had dominated the martial heaven continent, wouldn't the entire righteous path have been slaughtered? If you want to lie, put some thought into it. You wouldn't even be able to trick a child. Long Chen shook his head. Although there was a time when the righteous path had been suppressed, it definitely hadn't reached the point of being dominated. Otherwise, there would no longer be a righteous path. You don't believe it because you don't know anything. In our time, Tian Shezi rose like a shooting star, slaughtering the members of the corrupt path. In the end, if it weren't for the righteous path allying with many different powers to fight us, the righteous path would have long since vanished from this world. How is that dominating? All you did was get halfway before retreating back to your tortoise shell. You clearly weren't able to fight the entire world, so you shrank away, and yet that's called unrivaled domination by you? Do you even have a sense of shame? At this moment, Guoran interjected himself into the conversation. It doesn't matter. Isn't the Dragon Blood Legion supposed to be the #1 legion of the continent? Let us see your power. Where did all this talking come from? Sneered the corrupt expert. He was clearly fearless and openly provoking them. I'll handle you. Gu Yang couldn't endure it any longer and walked forward with his spear. That corrupt expert was about to speak when the large mustached man walked forward, getting between them. It seems you're a power-type fighter. It just so happens that I'm the same. I've already awakened my manifestation, but I won't bully you. I won't summon my manifestation, so we should be able to have a fair match. As for the corrupt path, there's nothing interesting about fighting a group of demonic monsters like them. The corrupt expert's expression sank upon hearing this. Exactly, we came here to exchange pointers. We have no malice. Although I'm a bit disappointed, I have to admit that you're all true warriors, said the man with the sword hanging on his waist. The mustached man said, Let me see just how strong the Dragon Blood Legion is. I hope you won't disappoint me too much. He also took out a spear. Strange runes flowed along it, giving it an ancient and heavy air. My name is Zuiyue. I'm a core disciple from the Nangong family. Hearing that he came from the Nangong family, the corrupt expert's expression twitched. The Dongfang, Shimin, Nangong, and Beitang families possessed immense power. The other experts' expressions also changed, especially because of this person's name. A core disciple from the Nangong family should have the surname Nangong, but he was actually surnamed Wu. The Nangong family was actually so powerful that it raised an outer disciple to such an extent. My name is Gu Yang, the first captain of Long Chen's Dragon Blood Legion. To be able to encounter an expert like you is an honor. Let's not waste any more time. Gu Yang took a deep breath. With a cry, he suddenly stepped forward, spear images filling the sky. Boom. As soon as Gu Yang attacked, Wu also did. The two of them were both power-type fighters, and their fighting style was direct. Their two spears clashed in a heaven-shaking exchange. The two of them shook, and then their spears swung through the air once more as they clashed again. As a result, it was Gu Yang who was forced back, shocked. This Zuiyue was actually stronger than him. Summon your manifestation. Because my manifestation has fully awakened, the heavenly Tao energy naturally comes to support me. I can't stop it. Summoning your manifestation is the only way to make it fair, said Zuiyue. An awakened Empyrean could summon heavenly Tao energy at will. Even without their manifestation summoned, they could control more heavenly Tao energy than an Empyrean whose manifestation hadn't awakened. However, Zuiyue was above board and explained this right at the start of the battle, not like that fellow Long Chen had encountered in the eastern Shen city who was conning others. Zuiyue's kind of conduct was the style worthy of a powerful and ancient family. Even the Dragon Blood warriors felt some admiration for him. Then I'll embarrass myself. Gu Yang nodded and summoned his manifestation. A rune lit up on his forehead, and an explosive power erupted within him. Space rumbled as Gu Yang suddenly shot forward, his power raised to a certain peak. Good. Wu Yu's eyes lit up as his battle intent ignited. He didn't like flashy exchanges. He would rather have a clash of brute power. Wu Yu's spear danced. Golden light flowed out of it, transforming into a blossoming lotus flower. The ground rumbled as their spear images clashed. Surging chi waves erupted. "Boss Gu Yang has gotten even stronger," exclaimed the Dragon Blood warriors. "That Wu Yu is also extremely powerful. Even without his manifestation, Boss Gu Yang doesn't have any advantage over him. He probably hasn't even used 80% of his real power. Really, the few of you only look on the surface. I feel like this Wu Yu is a very good match for Gu Yang," said Guoran. "A match? Are you using the wrong word?" asked Tangwana. Guoran shook his head. "No, that's the right word. Look, that Wu Yu has quite the manly face. If we cut off his facial hair, he'd be very handsome. Then we put his facial hair onto Gu Yang's head, and he'd be very handsome too. So don't you think that they're a good match?" The surrounding people almost coughed up blood. Guoran's brain definitely worked differently than others. The two of them were in the middle of fighting, and he was imagining how they could make up for each other's weak spots. Space continued to rumble as the fight between Gu Yang and Wu Yu intensified. Neither side was able to suppress the other. Boom. Finally, the two of them retreated at the same time. Gu Yang coughed up a mouthful of blood, causing everyone to jump. "I've lost," sighed Gu Yang. "Actually, it's my loss." Without realizing it, I was naturally absorbing energy from the air to assist me. It was an instinct that I couldn't control. But if we were in the same condition, I probably wouldn't be a match for you. Well, saying that doesn't mean anything. Once your manifestation has awakened, let's have a real fight. Wu Yu put away his spear. He and Gu Yang actually ended up being friends through this battle. Sometimes fighting was able to make you understand someone in an instant. All right, then once I awaken my manifestation, I'll definitely come to have a good fight with Brother Wu. Gu Yang nodded. "Awaken your manifestation? You make it sound easy," sneered the corrupt expert. Wu Yu's expression sank, and he pointed his spear at him. "A group of fiends, the heavens haven't put you in your place, so are you asking me to personally send you to hell? Send me to hell? It seems that you don't have that ability. Others might be afraid of your everlasting family, but the corrupt path isn't," sneered that expert. Although he had been a bit shocked at Wu Yu's identity at the start, he had only found it to be surprising. He wasn't particularly afraid. After all, any expert worthy of being sealed in the ancient era was a vicious character unwilling to be suppressed. Killing intent appeared on Wu Yu's face. He despised these fiends that never should have existed in this world. He was about to summon his manifestation when a figure walked out of the Dragon Blood Legion. "Leave this one to me." It was Yu Zifeng. Cheers rang out from the Dragon Blood warriors. Yu Zifeng's power gave him an extremely high position in their hearts. Seeing Yu Zifeng have a sword on his back, the man with the sword hanging on his waist said, "We're both sword cultivators. How about we exchange pointers?" "You aren't a sword cultivator," said Yu Zifeng bluntly. That man's expression changed. These words were a bit hurtful. It was an insult to say that he wasn't a sword cultivator. "Are you ready? I'm going to attack." Yu Zifeng ignored him though and looked at the corrupt expert. His right hand slowly reached for his sword. "A sword cultivator? I've already killed 3. It seems that you'll be the 4th. The corrupt expert smiled and suddenly took out a soul banner. Buzzing rang out, and blood mist filled the air, turning the world red. Countless wails stabbed into people's ears and even their souls. The surrounding space seemed to have become a sea of blood. Within that sea of blood were the wails of countless souls in pain. Even the people outside the sea felt a needle-like pain in their heads. As for Yu Zifeng, who was within that sea of blood, just how terrifying was the impact on him? No one could tell. "Bastard, this is a soul-devouring blood sea. Just how many innocent people have you killed?" shouted Wu Yu. "Haha, so someone actually recognizes my corrupt path's famous soul-devouring blood sea. Not bad, not bad. I'll tell you then. I exterminated over 300 sects to gather enough resentment to condense it. Then after another 10 years of fighting, I don't even know how much resentment I have gathered. But I can say that anyone who entered my blood sea has never been able to walk out. They will only become another resentful spirit strengthening it." The corrupt expert laughed, and his manifestations suddenly appeared behind him. Countless sinister heads appeared within his blood sea, swimming toward Yu Zifeng. These heads were condensed from the resentful spirits that had been slain by it. They were tortured to death in order to bring out as much resentment as possible. If there was the slightest weakness within your will, they would invade your soul. Even without any opening, their sharp cries would disturb the soul of anyone inside. This kind of evil art had already been lost in the recent clashes between the righteous and corrupt paths. That was because there was no way for them to gather enough resentment to condense this soul-devouring blood sea. So, in recent generations, such a thing had never appeared. But as someone from an everlasting family, Yu knew about it. It's just a deviant ability. I'll break it with one swing of my sword. Yu Zifeng's expression was still calm even in the middle of the soul-devouring blood sea. The screeching cries and soul invasion of the resentful spirits were unable to shake his Dao heart. Suddenly, his sword came out of his sheath, and it was like a dragon cry combined with a flash of lightning. Sword chi slashed out. It's useless. My soul-devouring blood sea is condensed of spiritual strength. It's formless. Just as the corrupt expert was laughing, his blood sea was cut in two by Yu Zifeng's sword. Those resentful spirits disintegrated in front of it. The will contained within his sword surpassed the heavenly Daos. It was a peerless sword, above the heavens, above the earth, above gods, and above devils. With one slash, heaven and earth shook, while gods and ghosts fled. The sword chi continued through the blood sea to the corrupt expert. Without any hesitation, the corrupt expert raised his soul banner in front of him. Shockingly, this terrifying divine item was also sliced in two by Yu Zifeng's sword. It then cut off a piece of the corrupt expert's head. This one slash stunned everyone who saw it. The corrupt expert's soul almost fled in terror. He suddenly threw the destroyed soul banner at Yu Zifeng. Explode! He was actually detonating his own divine item. However, another sharp sword light flashed, destroying his soul banner and not letting it explode. The corrupt expert was finally afraid. Even when he had swept through the world with Tian Xiezi, he had never encountered such a terrifying sword cultivator. He suddenly bit off a finger, drawing a rune in the air with it. Heavenly Evil Blood Evasion. This was an evasive art, one of his trump cards for preserving his life. However, just as he was about to jump within the rune, Yu Zifeng's sword tip pointed toward him. Yu Zifeng was unstoppable with his sword. Even the Empyrean with a sword hanging on his waist was shocked. With one swing of his sword, Yu Zifeng cut through the soul-devouring blood sea, and then he destroyed the soul banner divine item. Nothing could stop his sword. This sword intent. Even though that sword-wielding Empyrean was also a sword cultivator, the power within Yu Zifeng's sword made him feel minuscule. As for that corrupt expert, he actually fled in the face of that sword. All his arrogance of an awakened Empyrean vanished. Violet lightning pierces the clouds. Yu Zifeng's left forefinger and middle finger pressed against the back of his sword, and then he suddenly pushed it forward. A bolt of violet sword light shot out of the tip. It was just like a flash of lightning piercing through the air. That corrupt expert had fled into his blood rune, and his figure appeared tens of thousands of miles away. However, no matter how fast he was, Yu Zifeng's sword light was faster. It seemed to break the laws of space-time and instantly arrived in front of the corrupt expert. The blood rune surrounding the corrupt expert instantly exploded. It was like a beautiful firework. When the light faded, people saw a hole through that corrupt expert's chest. The corrupt expert was shocked. He let out a shout, and a blood-colored furnace appeared above his head. Light descended from it, enveloping him. Before people even understood what was going on, Yu Zifeng appeared above his head as well. That was especially shocking. How could there be two Yu Zifengs? But when they looked back to where Yu Zifeng had originally been, they found that he had vanished. One with the sword? The sword-wielding Empyrean stared in shock. As a sword cultivator, he knew just what level this signified. Just how had Yu Zifeng reached such a realm? With that attack just now, Yu Zifeng had merged with his sword. What had been left behind was just an afterimage. To merge fully with his sword meant that he had entrusted his life to his sword. If his sword was destroyed, he would die. This kind of realm was a wild gamble. Even though the sword-wielding Empyrean was also a sword cultivator, unless his cultivation base had reached Nether Passage and he had obtained a shocking divine sword, he wouldn't dare to do such a thing. One mistake would signify death. However, Zuiyue had done it. He was just a life star disciple who wasn't even an Empyrean. That was crazy. Looking back at the corrupt expert, the furnace above him had been sliced in half by Zuiyue. That sword of his crushed all laws and Daos before it. The corrupt expert coughed up blood and let out a furious roar. Having lost 2 divine items, he almost went insane. 2 sinister wings suddenly appeared within his manifestation. With those wings behind him, he looked like a giant bat. Countless demonic images appeared on top of his wings, and cries of thousands of ghosts shook people's souls. However, before he could unleash an attack with these wings, they were cut off by a swing of Zuiyue's sword. Impossible! My blood wings are one with the heavenly Daos. What power can sever the heavenly Daos? The corrupt expert couldn't believe his eyes. In his life, he normally had 3 things that he depended on. One was the soul banner, the other was the blood-colored furnace, and the last one was his devil wings. The first 2 were corrupt weapons he had personally forged, while the last was a divine ability of his manifestation. He had relied on these 3 things to kill an unknown number of geniuses in the past. However, in front of Zuiyue, whether it was his corrupt weapons or his manifestation's divine ability, nothing he did could last more than 1 move. The most shocking thing to him was how his manifestation was actually cut through. It was condensed from heavenly Dao energy. He had never imagined someone could sever it. The heavenly Daos are just a term for the Daos of the world. Do you really think your manifestation contains the power of all the Daos in this world? Asked Zuiyue coldly, his sword once more slashing down on him mercilessly. It looked like a simple slash, but it severed the laws of space-time. It silently fell without his opponent being able to move. The corrupt expert let out an unwilling roar, and 4 pairs of wings appeared within his manifestation, folding around him. However, Zuiyue's simple slash went through his wings without pausing in the slightest. The huge wings were cleanly sliced apart and then exploded into runes. The corrupt expert appeared in the sky, pale as paper. Suddenly, a line of blood ran down the top of his head and continued straight down. He then fell to the ground, split in 2. The corrupt expert was dead, with not even his Yuan spirit escaping. In front of Zuiyue, he seemed incredibly weak. From start to finish, he hadn't managed to block a single attack from Zuiyue. A powerful, ancient, awakened Empyrean was killed just like this. His divine items were destroyed and even his manifestation was severed. Everyone was silent for a moment. Even the Dragon Blood warriors were stunned. Zuiyue normally didn't reveal his power, and they hadn't realized how powerful he was. Gu Yang, Li Qi, and Song Mingyuan felt ashamed of themselves. Without them even knowing about it, Zuiyue had left them in the dust. Suddenly, Zuiyue began to stagger in the air. He almost fell out of the sky. Gu Yang hastily flew over to support him. "Are you all right?" asked Gu Yang. It seemed that killing that corrupt expert had not been as easy as Zuiyue made it seem. "My Yuan spirit is slightly injured. Most likely, there's still some deficit in my understanding of one with the sword. I'll go rest." Zuiyue was pale and he was starting to sweat. He seemed to be in pain. "Here's a soul-nourishing pill to relieve the pain. You were too hasty. Your one with the sword merger is truly powerful, but it's a double-edged sword. If you don't control it well, you'll injure yourself. Don't push yourself too hard," said Long Chen, patting Zuiyue on the shoulder. Long Chen sighed emotionally inside. Within the entire Dragonblood Legion, the most hard-working person was Zuiyue. Zuiyue didn't say much. He spent most of his time cultivating. Every time he made a breakthrough, he would set a new target for himself. The person he was most ruthless toward was himself. Even Long Chen felt inferior to him in that regard. 2 Dragonblood warriors supported Zuiyue as they returned to their resting place. Although he was injured, no one looked down on him. The sharpness of his attacks just now had been too terrifying. Even awakened Empyreans didn't have the slightest ability to resist or even run. "He really is a true expert. I admit, I can't count as a sword cultivator in front of him. The sword-wielding Empyrean sighed and turned to leave. Although he also cultivated the sword Dao, he found that his understanding of the sword Dao was a far cry from Yuzifeng. He was still following the regular path of the sword Dao, while Yuzifeng had already blazed a new one. Throughout history, those who could become one with their sword had always been the most frightening of all sword cultivators. However, it was also the most dangerous move within the sword Dao. One mistake spelled death. All sword cultivators warned their disciples not to attempt becoming one with their sword before the Nether Passage realm, as that was suicide. However, Yuzifeng had not just managed to reach that realm, but he could also use it in battle. Obviously, the path that he had blazed for himself was not a wrong one, or he'd have died from this move. Although his merger was not yet perfect, he had taken the most difficult step. In the future, he would definitely be able to perfect this move. Most admirable of all, Yuzifeng had relied on his own comprehension to do it. He walked his own path. By now, that sword cultivator Empyrean no longer felt any anger over Yuzifeng's previous remark. He only felt respect and admiration. Once that sword cultivator Empyrean left, Zuiyue said, "I should also be going. Although the Dragon Blood Legion isn't as powerful as I imagined, I see quite a few outstanding figures. Your fame isn't for nothing. You are Longchen, correct? You should be careful. There are many powerful figures vying for supremacy right now. You might be their first target because defeating you, the previous peak of this world, would be the most effective way for them to show off their power. Many thanks for your words of wisdom. I'll simply say this, if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. But the Dragon Blood Legion isn't afraid of trouble if it comes calling for us. If someone wants to climb higher by stepping on us, then I'm sorry, I'm not such a kind-hearted man." Longchen cupped his fists as thanks for Wuyu's warning. Based on his character, perhaps the Nangong family wasn't that bad. Well, I'll take my leave then. If you have time, you can come to my Nangong family as guests. We also have an amazing genius. Perhaps you can become friends. After saying that, Wuyu waved his hand, leaving. Following Wuyu's departure, the other experts that had come also left. Some of these experts were just present to gather information for the various large sections. Only a portion had come to challenge the Dragon Blood Legion. But with 3 awakened Empyreans present, there was no longer a place for them to fight. Most of the challengers had left since the Dragon Blood Legion hadn't come out. The ones who had stayed assumed that the Dragon Blood Legion would sooner or later come out, and today they managed to witness their power. Gu Yang and Wu Yu's battle had been enough for them to have a whole new level of respect for the Dragon Blood Legion. After all, someone who could fight evenly against an awakened Empyrean without also being one was amazing. It meant that Gu Yang's potential was extremely great. However, when Yuzifeng had fought, they had been scared stiff. He had killed an awakened Empyrean in just a few moves. That was a figure who had been sealed in the ancient era, someone who might be even stronger than Wu Yu. They had gained some useful information and could report back that their mission had been completed. They had no further reason to stay here. With everyone outside leaving, the Dragon Blood Legion returned to their abodes. They were ashamed of themselves for having been lost in the glory of their previous victory in Heavenly Fate Island. Originally, Long Chen had been planning on giving a blow to the Dragon Blood warriors with Gu Yang's defeat, but Gu Yang's toughness had exceeded his expectations. If Gu Yang could awaken his manifestation, he would definitely be a powerful warrior. Long Chen had once asked Gu Yang about his family, and Gu Yang had said that his family had gone through some kind of tribulation in the past, resulting in their inheritance being lost. As for how powerful they had once been, no one knew. However, in any case, Long Chen could sense that Gu Yang's bloodline energy was currently reviving. The scarlet blood spirit fish were stimulating his potential. On the other hand, Yuzifeng's power had been within Long Chen's expectations. In the previous battle, Yuzifeng had wanted to use this move, but Long Chen had stopped him by sending others to support him. Once Yuzifeng started going all out without regard for his own life, he was absolutely terrifying, to the point that even Long Chen got chills. Sword cultivators were famed for being the strongest defensively. There was no need to doubt this fact. Sword cultivators focused entirely on offense, thinking that as long as their attacks were strong enough, there was no need to defend. If their offense wasn't strong enough and they switched to defense, then that would just be a dying struggle that might win them a few more seconds of life before death. So true sword cultivators did not exchange pointers. Every battle was a battle to the death. As for that sword cultivator Empyrean that had come, after saying that he wanted to exchange pointers, Zuiyue had directly said that he wasn't a sword cultivator. That wasn't an insult, but it was telling him that true sword cultivators did not need to fight others to prove to themselves that they were powerful. A sword cultivator only had one opponent, and it was themselves. Other than themselves, no one else was qualified to be their opponent. They needed to have this kind of belief to never slack off and break through one shackle after another until they reached the peak of the sword Dao. Perhaps others didn't understand Zuiyue, but Long Chen understood him very well. He understood his pride. What Zuiyue was pursuing was something that others might not be able to imagine. What he wanted was to constantly challenge himself, to use his sword to corroborate his Dao, to open a brand new sword Dao for himself. "Boss, what should we do now?" Upon returning, Gu Yang turned to Long Chen. He felt a profound feeling of helplessness in front of awakened Empyreans. Wu Yu had fought openly and hadn't cheated him, but that wouldn't always be the case in the future. If Gu Yang fought against an awakened Empyrean, there was no way that he could beat them. A sensation of crisis welled up within him. That corrupt expert had said that he had been one of the 108 experts that followed Tian Xiezi. In other words, excluding whoever Tian Xiezi was, there were 107 other experts on that level. Just how could the Dragonblood Legion survive in the face of over 100 such experts? All the Dragonblood warriors felt cold. "There's nothing special. Just do what you should do. I called you out today so that you could see the change in the outside world. You don't need to feel ashamed. It's true that they are very powerful, but we are not weak either. The only thing we lack compared to them is a powerful foundation, but when have we ever relied on such a thing before? We just constantly risk our lives to get stronger, and that got us our current achievements. All you need to do is maintain that attitude of constantly climbing higher. Properly cultivate. Don't think that the loneliness of being unrivaled is so great," said Long Chen. The Dragonblood warriors sighed, swearing to find that sense of urgency they had once possessed. However, Long Chen didn't have them immediately go to cultivate. Instead, they first gathered for a good drink. Long Chen told them about what had happened outside, including how he had barged into Pill Valley all alone. They couldn't help clapping when they heard that. Then when he mentioned the gathering of past and present heroes, Guoran, whose tongue had already grown loose from the alcohol, said, "Boss, that gathering will definitely have the top geniuses of past eras. They'll either be a world-shaking hero or a nation-toppling beauty. It doesn't matter when it comes to the world-shaking heroes, but make sure to bring back a few nation-toppling beauties, hee." Long Chen looked at Guoran and shook his head. "I see a dark omen on your face. Be careful of a calamity of the flesh." "Aya!" Guoran suddenly let out a miserable cry as he was kicked away by Tangwan. "Guoran, you bastard, don't egg Long Chen on," shouted Tangwan. It could only be said that Guoran deserved it for speaking without thinking. If Long Chen hadn't responded properly, perhaps he also would have been implicated. As expected, as soon as Tangwana was done berating Guoran, she turned to Long Chen, who immediately said righteously, "Don't listen to his nonsense. I'm a righteous person." "Righteous? Only a ghost would believe you. I'll say it directly, don't go bothering a bunch of pretty girls. But if they're an upright and noble person, don't abandon them for nothing. Although women might be jealous, we aren't unreasonable. To sum it up, don't be unfaithful. You have to be steady with your womanizing, understood?" said Tangwaner solemnly. Just what had possessed this girl? How could she actually say such a thing? Long Chen didn't believe it. He looked suspiciously at Meng Qi and Chu Yao, only to see them silently smiling. "What are you looking at? These are my pure thoughts. Although it's a bit hard to accept." "I support you," said Tangwan, blushing. Long Chen smiled. He knew that such words were definitely against Tangwaner's heart, but she didn't want to harm Long Chen with her jealousy. The current state of the martial heaven continent was tense and complicated. There were powerful undercurrents in it. To protect yourself, you needed powerful connections. Long Chen had a special charisma to him that could be a powerful weapon against women. Although Tang Wanner didn't want Long Chen to end up with any more women, especially not foreign women, he needed to make connections if he wanted to stabilize himself in this new world. If he could find a good girl with a powerful background, perhaps that might give them a solid backer. So, despite being unwilling inside, she subtly encouraged Long Chen for everyone. Long Chen got up and held Tang Wanner's hand, softly saying, "Thank you. Don't worry, I won't be unfaithful and start sowing wild oats. I'm very happy with you by my side. Only when I'm together with you am I home." Tang Wanner hugged Long Chen. She couldn't change who she was. "Long Chen, you don't need to say anything. I understand. You don't need to change anything about yourself. If you changed, then you wouldn't be Tang Wanner. In my heart, you are irreplaceable." Only then did Tang Wanner silently cry with a smile, a burst of warmth appearing in her heart. She was particularly afraid of Long Chen one day finding that he no longer liked her. She felt that she was lacking the most amongst Long Chen's women. After their drinking celebration, Long Chen went to find Yu Zifeng. Yu Zifeng was still in the process of healing his Yuan spirit. Upon seeing Long Chen, Yu Zifeng said, "Boss, I want to go to the Heavenly Sword Gate and find my master. I have a few things puzzling me that are clouding my Dao heart. I need to discuss things with him." "That's a good idea. The Heavenly Sword Gate is a holy land for sword cultivators. It should be of great aid to your comprehension," said Long Chen. "But I'm just worried." "Don't worry about it. All the large powers on the continent are currently afraid of each other. There won't be any sudden battles. Since the Dragon Blood Legion doesn't have to worry about fighting for now, you can go without worrying about us." The next day, Yu Zifeng set off on his own. As for Long Chen, he spent a few peaceful days with Meng Qi, Chu Yao, and Tang Wanner. After a few days of rest, it was time for him to set off as well. The gathering of past and present heroes was about to start. He needed to finish up some preparations first. This gathering might end up being the gathering of the most monsters in all of history. Gu Yang and Wu Yu's battle had been an alarm for the Dragon Blood warriors. Although Gu Yang hadn't used the Dragon Blood battle armor, Wu Yu also hadn't used his trump cards. The two of them had fought in the purest clash of power, with Gu Yang actually being inferior. As for Wu Yu, he was just one of the Nangong family's many core disciples. It could be imagined just how terrifying the foundation of an everlasting family was. They no longer dared to slack off in the slightest. Their will to fight had been ignited once more. Sometimes, people needed a powerful figure as a reference in order to draw out more of their own potential. However, Long Chen didn't make them forcibly break through any bottlenecks they had. They were to calmly stay within the home of the cloud, chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. They could eat, drink, and play. They could do anything but cultivate. When Long Chen had said this, the Dragon Blood warriors had thought that he was being sarcastic. However, he had then explained that he wanted them to fully relax. They were to temporarily forget that they were even cultivators. Sometimes, people needed a certain rhythm in cultivation. That referred to pace, as well as tension and relaxation. The harder they worked at cultivation, the more fatigued they would grow, perhaps without even sensing it. An unsteady Dao heart was not suitable for cultivation, so the first step was to give them a good vacation. If they wished to, they could come up with a new identity for themselves and go play in the outside world. Long Chen gave them 1 month to do whatever they wanted. During this month, they were to forget about cultivation and do whatever they wanted to. Although this was neglecting their cultivation bases, their foundations were already extremely strong. This was just another way for them to temper their Dao hearts. Even if 10,000 people cultivated the same technique, their future paths would not be the same. Each person had to comprehend their own life slowly through experience. Long Chen's only requirement was that they focused on being safe. They could go to their homes and see their families, they could pay visits to old friends, and they could simply stare up at the clouds. It was up to them. There were powerful undercurrents flowing on the martial heaven continent, but at least on the surface, things were still calm. None of the large powers were willing to make any big movements. This was a rare moment of peace. There shouldn't be any significant battles during this time. The only thing they had to be on guard against was the corrupt path. This might be a bit dangerous, but cultivation was inherently dangerous. He couldn't constantly restrict them. They were his brothers, not his subordinates, and they had the right to pursue their own freedom. After arranging things for the Dragonblood Legion, Long Chen left on his own, heading toward the gathering of past and present heroes. Unexpectedly, the location of this gathering was actually the Western Desert. That was a bit far, but Long Chen didn't rush. He had plenty of time, so he just peacefully sat in his flying boat. Long Chen looked down at the mountains and plains that he rapidly flew by. The occasional startled roar of a fierce beast would come at him when he passed their territories. However, those beasts all felt a sense of danger from the flying boat, so they didn't attack. Long Chen ignored those beasts. Seeing the land swiftly pass beneath them, various emotions welled up within him. Back when he had first set off for the cultivation world, he had been a weak youth with grand ambitions. He and Little Snow had made a journey of 10,000 miles to take their first step on the path of cultivation. This would be the 10th year since that first step. He had fought countless battles and rivers of blood had dyed the ground, but he still hadn't reached the peak, nor had he unraveled the mysteries behind his origins. Instead, he was sucked into the quagmire of the cultivation world, unable to extricate himself. Sometimes, he wondered what kind of life he would have had if he hadn't been given the jade pendant. What would have happened if Long Tianxiao had hidden the truth about him? Would he already be married and have children? Would he be growing old in the Phoenix Cry Empire, living peacefully until he died? Regretfully, there was no way to know. People always said that upon stepping into the cultivation world, there was no way back. Now that he thought about it, it was true. The trees longed for peace, but the wind never left them alone. He only had more and more enemies, and enmity would pile up. Sometimes just a look could invite a killer. The cultivation world was a bare and naked world where the strong devoured the weak. During these 10 years of battle, he had grown tired of this senseless and unending fighting. However, he couldn't stop. If he stopped, he would be killed. Exercising forbearance? That would bring more humiliation, more slaughter, and more enmity. In the cultivation world, no matter what you did, you would make enemies, unless you stood at the peak of this world. At that time, whatever you said would be right. Even if you farted, countless people would respectfully come to admire the scent and praise it. At the beginning, Long Chen had thought the cultivation world to be mysterious and holy. But upon stepping into it, he found that it was a bloody and cruel fighting ring. It was filled with slaughter and an unending desire to dominate others. Some people had already been devoured by those desires. The stronger they grew, the more desire they felt, until they wished to be the ruler of this world. Long Chen looked down on such people the most. Whenever he encountered them, his first instinct was to slap them. As for this gathering of past and present heroes, he really didn't want to go. If he didn't go, he might make some enemies. But if he went, he would get even more enemies. Worst of all, he didn't have any trump cards right now. Evil Moon and the Heaven-Flipping Seal were in seclusion, absorbing the energy of the divine pillars. Huolong was also in seclusion as Long Chen had told it to refine the inverse Tao water spirit flame as quickly as possible. Only once it could fully control its power could he possibly manage to fight the pill fairy. Most importantly, if he wanted to refine 11th tier medicinal pills, he would need a powerful flame. He did have the Black Illusion Dragon Flame, but when he had obtained it with the pill fairy, they had agreed to split it in half. The half that Long Chen had obtained was only suitable for fighting. When refining pills, Huolong normally had to use the power of the Heaven Incinerating Flame. 4 pills below the 11th tier, the Heaven Incinerating Flame was strong enough. But for 11th tier pills, it wasn't hot enough. It would not fully unleash the medicinal energy of the ingredients, which would affect the final quality of the pills. Long Chen now had the formulas for 11th tier pills, as well as many 11th tier medicinal ingredients that he had obtained in the Yin-Yang world. It was possible for him to start refining 11th tier pills, but he hadn't. One reason was because Huolong hadn't refined the inverse Tao water spirit flame, so there was no way to refine high-grade 11th tier pills. Another reason was even more important. He didn't have a good enough pill furnace. He didn't have a pill furnace on the level of a divine item. Even Zheng Wenlong couldn't buy such a thing. Perhaps a pill furnace on ancestral items level was purchasable, but above that level, they were essentially in the hands of Pill Valley. Pill furnaces were no ordinary divine items. It required special craftsmanship to create one, and the craftsman would have to be an alchemist, or there would be no way to create a pill furnace that met the standards. Guo Ran could already create divine items, but he couldn't forge a pill furnace. As for Pill Valley, there was no way that they would give him one. So if Long Chen wanted to get a pill furnace, he would have to think of something himself. He was in the middle of flying when his boat suddenly shook. Looking ahead, he saw a giant bird flying over, covering the sun. It was causing the surrounding space to twist. It was a terrifying 12th rank magical beast. It was enveloped in golden light that made it look like a sun. As it flew through the air, wind buffeted Long Chen's flying boat. It was going extremely fast, but Long Chen's vision was sharp enough to recognize it. It was a golden crow with 3 feet. The light surrounding it was like a flame. A 3-foot golden crow. Long Chen's heart shook. It was an ancient beast. Based on its aura, it had fully matured. On its back, Long Chen saw an elegant figure sitting cross-legged. Her exposed arms were like white jade. Her long hair covered her face, but just her figure was enough to make a man indulge in fantasies. There was a golden bow on her back, but before Long Chen could get a closer look, she had sped off. It seems she's one of those supreme geniuses from the ancient era. Just that steed of hers is enough to sweep through others. I wonder where she's from? I knew I should have listened to Yi Lingshan explain some more about these experts, sighed Long Chen. In the Martial Heaven Alliance, Yi Lingshan had wanted to give him some well-known knowledge of the famous experts, but he hadn't been interested as he had been in a rush to return to the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. He couldn't help thinking it would be good if Yi Lingshan was present. Perhaps she would have been able to recognize that person's identity-based. Brother, have you ever driven a flying boat like mine? Suddenly, a shout rang out. Long Chen turned to see a man operating a strange flying boat. He looked down on Long Chen and shouted at him. Was there really such a need to show off an amazing flying boat? Long Chen ignored him and sped off. However, after just a bit, that person had caught up to him, shouting, I was asking you a question. Do you recognize this flying boat? Long Chen started to get angry. If someone had a great flying boat, fine. Did they have to show it off? Based on that person's powerful aura, he was definitely an expert. Long Chen frowned. Not wanting to cause any trouble, he quickened his pace. Now that person seemed angry. His flying boat accelerated, and he instantly passed Long Chen. Fuck, even such a person deserves to be called a supreme expert of the ancient era? That's only because you never encountered me. If you had, I'd have slapped you dead. Cursed Long Chen. Did those ancient experts not know how to be low-key? Boom. Suddenly, a mountain exploded in front of him, causing Long Chen to jump and stop his flying boat. A man came walking out of the dust, appearing wretched. Upon seeing Long Chen, he shouted, Brother, have you ever operated a flying boat like this? Do you know how to use the brakes? Long Chen was dumbfounded, not having expected this person to say such a thing. He was about to reply when that person looked into the distance and suddenly fled, instantly vanishing. Bastard, what rat dares to steal my mechanism Sect's flying boat? Suddenly, a streak of light came flying over. It was a giant metal bird and incredibly quick. 7 experts jumped off its back, with 3 of them being awakened Empyreans. The 7 of them immediately surrounded Long Chen, their expressions dark. Reveal your true face, shouted one of them. That was because Long Chen had covered his face with Yuan's spirit energy. Even an awakened Empyrean couldn't see his true face. There's no need for that. The person who stole your flying boat already ran in that direction. Long Chen pointed in the direction where that person had fled. That person hadn't even warned Long Chen before running. Hence, Long Chen didn't feel like he was a good person and didn't plan on protecting him. Did I ask that? I told you to reveal your true face, shouted the first speaker impatiently. At the same time, strange cylindrical objects appeared in the hands of the others. Those cylinders were pointed at Long Chen, and he immediately got goosebumps. They most likely contained some terrifying mechanisms. His expression darkened and he coldly said, "I told you that I wasn't the one that stole your flying boat. It would be best if you don't go too far. My temper's not very good. Are you deaf? I ordered you to reveal your true face precisely because I suspect you're that fellow's companion. If you don't want to die, you'll listen when I speak. Based on your robes, you're just some weakling from the current generation of the martial heaven continent. You're even hiding your heavenly Tao fluctuations. I'll give you to the count of 3. Shouted that person. Is your mechanism sect so unreasonable? A cold smile appeared on Long Chen's face. In front of the mechanism sect, you're just an ant. Why would we need to talk reason with you? My patience is limited. It's good that you're not reasonable. I'm also not good at talking reason with others, said Long Chen indifferently. 2. The runes on the cylinders pointed at Long Chen lit up. If you attack, you'll regret it, sneered Long Chen. Die. One of the 7 of them suddenly attacked, golden light shooting at Long Chen's chest. That golden light was shockingly fast, arriving in front of Long Chen as soon as it appeared. A destructive energy filled that golden light, and even divine armor would be destroyed in front of it. As for just a regular spiritual yuan defense, that didn't pose the slightest hindrance to it. However, just as the golden light passed through Long Chen's body, he began to dissipate. It was actually just an illusion. Watch out! Long Chen had appeared in front of that person. Before the latter could unleash a second attack, a large hand slapped him across the face. His head exploded like a melon. Even his Yuan spirit was killed. Bastard, you dare kill the people of the mechanism sect? Their leader roared, and suddenly multiple rays of light shot out of their cylinders. There were light rays, flames, nets, and flying spears. They all came flying at Long Chen. Bang! All those attacks were destroyed by a giant stone pillar. Long Chen didn't have a suitable martial weapon right now, so he actually took out one of the divine pillars he had brought out of the Brahma's secret realm. The giant pillar was so huge that just by appearing, it blocked all the attacks. It was shockingly hard and contained divine energy, so it could be considered a giant divine item. With Long Chen's immense power, it not only smashed their attacks but also swung toward the 6 of them. The 6 of them were immediately covered in strange armor. Their cylinders vanished, replaced by spears. However, that divine pillar was too heavy, and adding on Long Chen's power, they were sent flying. They were shocked and infuriated, not having expected to run into such a tough opponent. Spread out. That pillar's too huge for him to use properly. He won't last more than a few exchanges, shouted their leader. His manifestation appeared behind him, and flying around the pillar, he attacked. He was a true Empyrean with an awakened manifestation. Seeing him coming, flames of fury soared in Long Chen's heart. He hadn't provoked anyone, and yet he was always unlucky. No wonder that fellow stole your flying boat. You're a pile of trash. Enraged, Long Chen agilely dodged his spear, preparing to counterattack. However, just at that moment, a sense of alarm rose in his heart, and he hastily dodged to the side. Countless thin needles flew by him. Despite dodging quickly, he was still struck in the shoulder, and half his body instantly became numb. Those needles contained poison. Die! Seeing Long Chen had been struck, one of them attacked him from behind. His spear was just about to stab into Long Chen's body when Long Chen caught the tip with his hand. With a cold snort, he was about to push back when the tip trembled. Boom! The spear's tip actually exploded. It happened so suddenly that Long Chen's hand was blown to pulp. If it was anyone else, they probably would have died. It seems you have some power. However, your generation was born in a declined era. In front of us, you still have to kneel submissively. Resisting will only increase your humiliation. Their leader had realized that Long Chen wasn't ordinary, but he was still fearless. His spear rumbled toward Long Chen once more. It's just a heretical path, yet you dare bring it out? Long Chen sneered, killing intent blazing in his eyes. He was truly infuriated. It was just a misunderstanding, yet these people wanted his life. Since that was the case, he wouldn't stand on courtesy. Divine Ring, Battle Armor. Long Chen's 5-colored divine ring appeared behind him, and 5 stars appeared in his eyes. A powerful aura surged out. That expert had his spear blown apart by a single punch from Long Chen. At the same time, a foot came straight for his face. However, he sneered, and his left hand reached toward Long Chen's foot. Just as he was about to grab it, a special glove covered his hand, one with sharp points on the fingertips. There were countless thin barbs on those tips, and once they stabbed flesh, they would tear out a huge chunk of it. If the barbs reached the bone, then unless that bone broke, there would be no way to pull them out. This glove was an extremely insidious weapon. That expert's hand clamped over Long Chen's foot. However, those barbs didn't manage to stab into Long Chen's flesh because a layer of white scales had appeared between them. Boom. Grabbing Long Chen's foot didn't manage to stop Long Chen's power. It merely diverted it slightly, resulting in it smashing into the expert's chest. He instantly vomited blood, with his shattered innards mixed within. This strike of Long Chen's had been too powerful, and even his armor was unable to completely resist its power. That shocked this expert of the mechanism sect. Even through his armor, he was still injured to this extent. Just how powerful did that attack have to be? Without his armor, he would have been killed. Just as he was starting to get a bad feeling, 3 of his companions attacked Long Chen, their spears aiming at his vitals from 3 different angles. Every part of their spears was filled with their special mechanisms. Anyone who was struck by them would definitely die. The mechanism sect's experts were covered from head to toe in concealed weapons. They were just like Guoran, but Guoran's mechanisms were a far cry from theirs. Caught from 3 different angles, Long Chen slammed his hands at 2 of the spears and kicked the spear coming at him from behind. Seeing this, the 3 of them sneered, seeming to already be able to see the scene of Long Chen's miserable death. However, just as they were about to make contact, Long Chen also sneered. Golden light exploded. 108 golden dragon teeth appeared, striking the 3 of them. Dodge! The leader of these experts suddenly roared. He instantly saw just how terrifying the golden dragon teeth were. At the same time, he realized why Long Chen had been fighting them with his fists the entire time. It was to mislead them into thinking that Long Chen only specialized in close-range combat. Now that he revealed his true abilities, they were caught off guard. Regretfully, he reacted slowly, and the 3 people attacking him reacted even slower. The dragon teeth pierced straight through their armor, and they instantly turned into bloody mist. Those dragon teeth were unimaginably sharp. They were the teeth of the metal-devouring evil dragon. For them to come out at such close range without them expecting it, there was nothing they could do. The dragon teeth were plenty sharp but not flexible enough for Long Chen. When he was going all out, he couldn't use them. Using his soul to control them wasn't his specialty. Against truly powerful experts, he wasn't able to kill them with the dragon teeth. However, by using them as a surprise attack with enough preparations, Long Chen had turned them into a powerful killing blow. "Just who are you?" shouted the leader. "Why didn't you ask before? Will you just kill anyone you encounter? Some ancient sect you are. It seems that you're just a bunch of cowardly idiots. I told you that you'd regret it. If you want to kill me, you have to be prepared to be killed as well," sneered Long Chen. The dragon teeth whirled through the air, attacking the remaining 3 experts of the mechanism sect. "Bastard, do you realize what kind of calamity you've provoked by killing people of the mechanism sect? Your sect, your family, they'll all be implicated by you." Boom. He had barely finished speaking when Long Chen mercilessly slashed a dragon tooth at him. His hasty block resulted in him being blown back. Trash stays the same throughout history. The mechanism sect raised idiots like you, so I doubt it's a good place. For you to have survived all this time, you probably didn't even dare to come out of your tortoise shell, said Long Chen. Killing intent blazed within him. Although he was ruthless, he had his own bottom line. He hated it the most when people said that they would exterminate a person's whole clan and sect. Even when destroying the heaven-suppressing magic sect or Heavenly Fate Island, Long Chen had given people inside ample time to run. As for those who didn't flee and instead wanted to kill him, he didn't view them as innocent. On the other hand, some idiotic sects would really destroy a sect to its last member without leaving anyone behind. That was a display of their power. Perhaps the reason why Long Chen had so many enemies was because he wasn't ruthless enough. If he killed regardless of good or bad, acting according to Evelmun's values, exterminating whole sects and families, he definitely wouldn't have so many enemies. At the very least, many people would not dare to provoke him. However, he disdained bullying the weak to show his power. Building his fame by taking the lives of the weak was beneath his bottom line as a person. These experts of the mechanism sect, on the other hand, were no different than idiots. When Dongfang Yuyang had said that the ancient sects and powers that had come out had their own confidence and grace, Long Chen had almost believed him. But now that he had encountered the mechanism sect, he knew that idiots were not unique to one era. The three experts of the mechanism sect were forced onto the defensive by the dragon teeth. However, golden lights would occasionally shoot out of various parts of their armor as various concealed weapons shot out. There was truly an endless number of hidden mechanisms on their armor. Many of their attacks came without any warning. If Long Chen wasn't already very familiar with Guorant's armor, he might have been the one at an immense disadvantage. The mechanism sect's armor was even more flexible than Guorant's. Their mechanisms shot out in clever and smooth ways that made them difficult to defend against. In fact, it wasn't just their armor. Sometimes, the concealed weapons that they shot out also had additional mechanisms. They might suddenly explode or unleash a torrent of poison needles. Bastard, do you think just your little bit of power is enough to look down on the mechanism sect's prestige? Roared their leader. He had already realized that Long Chen was definitely a big figure of the current generation. If Long Chen had reported his name, perhaps this battle could have been avoided. Now, the leader was a bit afraid. Long Chen's power had far surpassed their expectations. 4 of them had already died, while 3 of them were barely hanging on. Without this little bit of power, I'd probably already have been killed by you. You said that you don't talk reason, and it just so happens that I don't either. Let's talk with power instead, sneered Long Chen. Considering their actions, it was a typical case of bullying the weak but being afraid of the strong. This so-called powerful sect of the ancient era was a coward dressed in a bully's clothes. Long Chen had already made some concessions at the start, but that had only made them even more overbearing. They had now completely infuriated him. Are you really planning on becoming enemies with the mechanism sect? Roared their leader. Their mechanisms were unable to cause any effective damage to Long Chen. It seemed that he was very familiar with their techniques. They even suspected that he was also someone from the ancient era, but from the start, they had sensed that his aura was completely different from the auras of the ancient experts. The cultivation environment of the ancient era was very different from the current era, so there was a clear difference in auras between experts of different eras. The most curious thing to them was that Long Chen had been injured quite easily at the start, meaning that he hadn't known about their mechanism sect. Could it be that he had grown so familiar with their secret abilities in just this little bit of time? If that was really the case, then that was too terrifying. Let's stop. The mechanism sect accepts defeat. Finally, the leader lowered his head. Long Chen snorted and finally pulled back his dragon teeth. After killing 4 of them, he was feeling a bit better. However, just at that moment his anger flared once more. You are courting death. The 3 of them had only paused for a moment once Long Chen had pulled back his dragon teeth. Then they took out dragon cannons, sinister smiles appearing on their faces. Die, idiot! The 3 cannons unleashed their attacks at the same time. 3 bolts of azure light pierced through the air, enveloping Long Chen within them. The void crumbled where that light went, and even the 3 of them were knocked back by the recoil force. Only the awakened Empyrean had it better off. The others had their arms break from the impact, but they were still pleased. The twisting space eventually calmed down, but Long Chen's figure was nowhere to be seen. Haha, idiot, did you think the mechanism sect's power was something you could imagine? Their leader laughed heartily. In order to activate their cannons, they needed a bit of time. In an intense fight, there was no way to unleash them. But as soon as Long Chen pulled back, it gave them the chance. You cut off your own chances of surviving. Don't blame me. A cold voice rang through the air. It sounded like it came from a fiend from the depths of hell. The three of them were appalled. Hastily looking up, they saw Long Chen was standing in the sky above them. Half his body was soaked in blood. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. Those dragon cannons had definitely been extremely terrifying. He had no idea what kind of power they were using, but if he hadn't dodged in time, he would have died. That near brush with death had come so suddenly that he hadn't had time to summon the Azure Dragon battle armor. Despite doing his best to dodge, one of those attacks had brushed past his shoulder, ripping out a chunk of flesh. He had possessed no enmity with the Mechanism Sect before this. Although they had gone extremely far this time, after killing 4 of them, Long Chen had been willing to leave matters there. However, this restraint almost cost him his life. Now there was no way to hold back his fury. He suddenly took out Evil Moon. That huge black blade unleashed a hellish roar as it slashed toward them. "You're Long Chen." Upon seeing that signature blade, those experts let out startled cries. Long Chen didn't give them any chance to explain. His merciless attack gave them no room to flee. Those experts were pale. They had recognized Long Chen through Evil Moon. Now they suddenly recalled that the light behind Long Chen was known as his divine ring. They had actually misjudged the ring behind him as a blessing of the heavenly Daos. It wasn't actually similar to anything related to heavenly Daos, but they hadn't cared too much about it. Now that they realized the truth, it was too late. Long Chen was already enraged. "Run!" The 3 of them formed hand seals at the same time. The metal bird that they had parked in the distance suddenly shot out a beam of light that enveloped them. Boom! Long Chen's saber slashed through thin air. The 3 of them were pulled into the metal bird. The metal bird instantly flew into the air, about to flee. But just at that moment, a giant divine pillar smashed into it. That giant divine pillar slammed into the metal bird, smashing it into the ground. As a result, a long ditch appeared in the land. This attack had contained Long Chen's killing intent. Hence, the metal bird was smashed to pieces, while the pillar also crumbled from how hard the metal bird had been. The metal bird was now no more than a pile of scrap. It had died with the pillar. Suddenly, 3 figures flew out. That was their Yuan spirits. Their physical bodies had been destroyed in the impact, and now they could only flee with their Yuan spirits. Die! A bolt of lightning instantly swallowed the 3 of them. They barely had a chance to scream before they exploded. "Where do you think you're going?" Suddenly, Long Chen unleashed a second lightning arrow. One of the Yuan spirits had actually used some unknown technique to survive Long Chen's attack. That Yuan spirit belonged to their leader. "Long Chen, just wait. The Mechanism Sect won't let you off." He let out a furious roar before actually self-detonating. His Yuan spirit transformed into runes that flew out in every direction. His voice rang throughout the air from every one of the runes. "Even in death, I'll pass this news to the sect. Long Chen, you and everyone near you should just wait to be annihilated by the Mechanism Sect." Long Chen's lightning arrow destroyed most of the runes, but a portion of them flew away. This was most likely some secret art to transform that leaders will into runes, and they would pass news of his death to the Mechanism Sect. Perhaps Long Chen could have destroyed all the runes with one attack, but he hadn't been expecting something like this, so there was no way to stop it. Since there was no way to stop it, he couldn't be bothered to care. In any case, he wasn't afraid of people knowing. He waved his hand, grabbing the fragments of the stone pillar and the scrapped metal bird. Of course, he also flipped through the corpses, taking their spatial rings. Long Chen took out a fist-sized sparrow. It looked very ordinary, but it wasn't actually a sparrow. It was a tool that Guoran had made to pass information. Long Chen opened the stomach of the sparrow, placing the spatial rings inside. The armor and metal bird of the Mechanism Sect should be quite helpful to Guoran. After the sparrow activated, it transformed into a beam of light that shot into the distance. Long Chen was just about to leave when his pupils shrank. At some point, a white-robed woman had appeared, standing in the sky. That woman had actually appeared without him sensing it at all. Long Chen couldn't help being shocked. Standing there, she was wrapped in immortal mist that gave off watery fluctuations. She was like a fairy wrapped in illusion. Ripples spread from every part of her, making it impossible for anyone to see her true appearance. It was only vaguely possible to see that she had waist-long hair and an elegant figure. There was an unspeakable immortal charm to her. She was definitely a peak expert. To be able to escape the senses of the 9-star hegemon body art, she must be extremely powerful. You killed people of the Mechanism Sect. You might have to deal with some trouble in the future. Her voice was gentle like water. I already have plenty of trouble, and I don't mind adding a Mechanism Sect into the mix, said Long Chen indifferently. May I ask if you have any pointers? The woman shook her head. I was just passing by and happened to see it. The Mechanism Sect is very difficult to deal with, and their methods are sinister. They'll do anything it takes to achieve their goals, so only a few people are willing to provoke them. You had best be prepared. Then many thanks. Ever since I stepped into the cultivation world, the troubles have never stopped, so I'm already used to it. Long Chen cupped his fists in thanks. You should be Long Chen, correct? Correct. You really are just like the stories. Let me warn you, the Mechanism Sect has a supreme expert of the ancient era, Zhao Wuji. He's very vengeful and a terrifying figure. He will also be attending the gathering, so you'll definitely see him there. After saying that, the woman's body merged into the empty space as if she didn't possess a solid body. She vanished at will, without Long Chen being able to grasp where she had gone. The monsters of the ancient era really are terrifying, sighed Long Chen. Previously, there had been that woman on the 3-foot golden crow. She had almost flipped his flying boat just by passing by. Then there was this woman who came and went silently like a ghost. They both gave him a sense of immense pressure. Since such a woman had called Zhao Wuji a terrifying person, he was probably truly terrifying. It seems I'm fated to be accompanied by bad luck in this life. Even just quietly traveling, I run into such bad luck. Just how did these blind idiots end up running into me? Long Chen sighed. He had silently picked up another enemy. Whatever, it doesn't matter. If someone wants to play, I'll accompany them. Long Chen took a deep breath and stepped into his flying boat, flying away. He quickly saw the western part of the martial heaven searing. Ripples appeared on the surface of the water as he flew over it. Things were very peaceful. Any sea demons that appeared were frightened away by the pressure of the flying boat. Suddenly, an intense fluctuation came from within the primal chaos space. Long Chen hastily looked, only to see a figure slowly surfacing within the ball of inverse Tao water spirit flame that was hanging in the sky. Hua Long had managed to refine a portion of its power before, allowing it to slowly devour the rest of the inverse Tao water spirit flame without any rejection. Hua Long had dived into it. During this time, Hua Long had been like a fetus slowly being nourished by the inverse Tao water spirit flame. Now it was breaking out. Hua Long's figure slowly flew out. Its whole body was fiery red, but now there were water-like ripples coming from it, like it was a dragon of lava. It suddenly roared and devoured the ball of inverse Tao water spirit flame hanging in the sky. After devouring it, Hua Long's body expanded, and it seemed a bit bloated. Hua Long had already learned to control the inverse Tao water spirit flame's power. It would now just slowly digest it. Good job, Hua Long. It just so happened that I was lacking trump cards. You woke up at the right time. Long Chen laughed. Hua Long had awakened, and he could clearly sense its terrifying fluctuations. Hua Long vanished from the primal chaos space, reappearing on Long Chen's arm. It had just touched Long Chen's arm when his arm caught fire. Hua Long hastily returned to the primal chaos space. It seemed it would need some more time. Long Chen was excited, but Hua Long was 10 times more excited. It had just tried to show some affection for Long Chen, only to burn him. It's fine, it's fine. Hua Long, the stronger you are, the better, comforted Long Chen. He looked at his arm. It had turned black, almost all the way to his bone. If Hua Long hadn't retreated fast enough, his arm would have been turned to ash. Hua Long communicated with Long Chen spiritually, apologizing like a child that had made a mistake. Long Chen comforted it, even praising it. In the future, it would be able to help him immensely. After awakening, Huolong's intelligence had grown. It told Long Chen that it could use the inverse Dao water spirit flame in battle now. Although its control wasn't great enough for alchemy yet, there was no problem when it came to fighting. Furthermore, this meant that Long Chen would be able to protect himself if he encountered the pill fairy once more. Good. Then work hard during this time. Try to control it perfectly. Only then can I use it to refine pills. Being able to refine 11th tier pills is the only way for me to get stronger, said Long Chen. 11th tier pills would be his foundation for getting stronger right now. He had to resolve that problem quickly, or there was no way he would be able to compete with the monsters that had just appeared. The flying boat quietly flew over the martial heaven searing. He didn't encounter any more trouble, however. There were a few powerful existences that sped past him along the way. He sensed great pressure from every one of them. Clearly the supreme experts that had been worth sealing in the past were not easy to deal with. However, Long Chen felt a fierce battle intent soar within him. His blood started to heat up once more in anticipation. Eventually he reached the land on the other side. However, there wasn't a single blade of grass present. It was an endless barren desert. As he got further into the land, he saw some cities, but their population was very low. There was no way for them to compare to the eastern wasteland. Eventually, he reached a giant city that made Long Chen's heartbeat quicken. He had finally reached the gathering of past and present heroes. This was an extremely ancient city. It lay in the middle of the desert like a slumbering beast. However, even from a distance, it was possible to see the divine light enveloping it. Within the desert, it was particularly conspicuous. According to Dongfang Yuyang, this ancient city was a remnant from the ancient era, and it still contains some of the immortal charm from that era. It was one of the Dongfang family's treasures. When the Dongfang family had come out of seclusion, they had brought out this ancient city. However, this was not their ancestral land. No one knew where their ancestral land was. Only once Long Chen got closer to the city did he sense just how huge it was. It was like its own world. It contained its own spatial laws and was actually larger than it appeared on the outside. Once his flying boat got closer to its walls, it seemed particularly minuscule in comparison. Many miles before he could reach the city, an invisible force suddenly appeared, stopping his flying boat. At the same time, 4 of the Dongfang family's disciples appeared in front of it. The 4 of them were all women, and they smiled warmly. "Please show us your invitation," asked one of them respectfully. The 4 of them were young, but the heavenly Daos revolved around them. They were actually all awakened Empyreans. Long Chen couldn't help being stunned. It seemed that he really had been a frog at the bottom of a well. Back when he had killed 2 awakened Empyreans, it had been enough to shake the continent. Now that these ancient powers had appeared, Long Chen found that those Empyreans he had slain were far from the first batch to appear. More awakened Empyreans had long since appeared in this era, but the powers that they came from were low-key and concealed the fact. Now, they were all appearing at once. Long Chen walked off the flying boat and gave his invitation to the woman. She received it with both hands, and upon seeing his name, she was startled. "So you are this era's expert. How fortunate. May I ask how many attendants you brought? It will be much more convenient to arrange things if I register them." "It's just me." Long Chen shook his head. He waved his hand, putting away his flying boat, indicating that he was on his own. The 4 women were even more surprised. It seemed that all the big figures that had come had brought a group in grand style. For Long Chen to come alone surprised them. "I'm just a very poor soul. I can barely feed myself, let alone afford attendance," said Long Chen. The 4 of them laughed, feeling that his sense of humor was very refreshing. A top expert who was so at ease and laid back was truly rare. "Mr. Long Chen, please follow me." One of them led Long Chen into the city. The huge gates and stone walls were covered in mysterious runes, not one of which he recognized. Upon walking in, he felt 3 waves of power sweep past his body. This was clearly the ancient city's protective formation. Long Chen felt that this formation was not at all inferior to Pill Valley's divine formation. So this was the foundation of an everlasting family? It was truly powerful. They followed the path, entering another gate and then another. Long Chen found that each gate had different runes operating on them. This ancient city really is powerful. Even without activating the formation, it possesses such power. If it was activated, just how powerful would it be? Sighed Long Chen. Hearing his praise, the woman said, "This ancient city is the Dongfang family's divine object. In truth, even we don't know how powerful it is. After all, things are peaceful now, and there aren't any large-scale battles. There's no use for such a battle fort." Long Chen's heart shook. It seemed that this city wasn't as simple as just a city. Could it be like the Mo Mountain Seal? It was its own battle fort? If that was the case, then who could block such a humongous object? Could it be that this city doesn't have any historical battle records? Asked Long Chen curiously. Of course there are. The woman was about to continue speaking when a middle-aged man who just happened to be walking past them interrupted. How can you be messing around while receiving guests? What's next? Little Chui understands her mistake. The woman attending Long Chen immediately lowered her head and apologized. It seemed that this middle-aged man's status was extremely high. Long Chen examined him. He was a nether passage expert without resonance with the heavenly Daos that would signify he was an Empyrean. However, his aura was well hidden, and Long Chen was unable to determine what step of nether passage he was on. My apologies, this girl plays around too much and neglects her work. Don't take it to heart. The middle-aged man smiled slightly to Long Chen and then said to Little Chui, "Hurry and take the guest to the Soul Harmony courtyard. Take note of your image in the future." Yes. The middle-aged man nodded to Long Chen before leaving. Little Chui continued leading Long Chen forward. After being chided, she didn't dare to continue speaking. "Is he your boss? Why is he so fierce?" asked Long Chen. This sudden question elicited a chortle from Little Chui. Covering her mouth, she said, "Please don't tease me. If I'm seen like this, I'll be scolded again." In an everlasting family, when would people ever call someone above them boss? They were always given grander and proper statuses. Furthermore, Long Chen's questioning expression was truly funny, while Little Chui didn't have much experience with the outside world. "He is our manager. Although his cultivation base isn't very high, he has a great deal of authority and is in charge of this gathering of past and present heroes. All our actions directly relate to the face of the Dongfang family, so our actions have to be perfect. We can't mess around, I shouldn't say any more, or I'll be scolded again." Little Chui also didn't usually like speaking to strangers. When it came to attending all the previous experts that had already arrived, she never said more than she had to. But for some reason, even though it was her first time meeting Long Chen, she didn't feel that she needed to be on guard, and so her mouth loosened. "What are you afraid of him for? Who told you that rules have to be followed? I cultivate precisely doing whatever I want to do. If you're stuck to the rules, why bother cultivating at all?" said Long Chen with an expression of righteous indignation. Little Chui could only beg for mercy as she held back her laughter. Just where was the air of a supreme expert? Long Chen seemed more like a scoundrel to her. There was something about Long Chen that made him seem like an old friend to her. Although she knew that Long Chen was teasing her, she couldn't help it. Long Chen could only stop teasing her. Originally, he had been hoping to learn some useful information from her, but then he felt it was improper for him to bully such an inexperienced lady. That middle-aged man had appeared just as Long Chen was asking about the history of the ancient city. That was too coincidental. He clearly didn't want Long Chen investigating any information about them. If he really did learn anything valuable from Little Chui, she would definitely be punished afterward. So Long Chen decided against continuing. Unexpectedly, there were transportation formations within the city that they entered. After going through two of them, they arrived at the Soul Harmony courtyard. A giant gate was present in front of it, with the words Soul Harmony Courtyard written in immortal characters. Long Chen recognized them. On the other side, he could see a mountain range with a verdant forest. Scattered throughout were some pavilions that blended into the background. Bursts of fragrance came from within. "Mr. Long Chen, this is the Soul Harmony courtyard. Once you enter, there will be other attendants to look after you," Little Chui said respectfully before leaving. As soon as Long Chen walked in, more of the Dongfang family's disciples came over to him. They were all beautiful women. However, these women were not as powerful as little Cui. They were just ordinary Empyreans whose manifestations hadn't awakened. That made Long Chen sigh with relief inside. If all of them were awakened Empyreans, that would be crazy. Clearly, little Cui and the others that had received him at the walls were some of the Dongfang family's most outstanding disciples. They were only set up as attendants when the higher-ups needed them to be, and these women were the true attendants. In any case, having 4 awakened Empyreans greet newcomers was definitely amazing. Even Long Chen had been shaken. Now seeing these ordinary Empyreans, he felt much better. These women were much more professional. After checking his invitation again, they gave him a spatial ring. When Long Chen looked inside, he saw that it was a gift the Dongfang family had prepared. Inside was a foot-tall jade bottle. Although it was completely sealed, it didn't stop a refreshing feeling from exuding out of it. Peak-grade soul-calming elixir. Long Chen couldn't help being shocked. Such a thing had already vanished from the continent, and it existed only in some ancient records. There were many kinds of soul-calming elixir. However, this kind of peak-grade soul-calming elixir was not something that could be refined. It was something that could only be produced when a vein of blood-soul or formed a spirit spring that absorbed the essence of the ore. Even ordinary soul-calming elixir was very valuable, but to life-star experts, it only had minuscule effects. However, if it was peak-grade soul-calming elixir, then it could allow them to cultivate twice as fast with half the work. It was a very precious item. Mr. Long Chen, this is a map of the Soul Harmony Courtyard. There are many different areas that are open to you. There is an auction area and a trading area where you can make transactions according to your own needs. The true gathering of past and present heroes will only start in 3 days. During this time, you can freely roam about. If you need any help at all, you can come find one of us at any time. One of the attendants also took out a map for Long Chen after giving him the Dongfang family's gift. An auction area and a trading area? Long Chen's eyes lit up. He wondered if he could get anything good there. After the guidance of the attendants, Long Chen followed a small stone path through the ancient forest. Birdsong and the fragrance of flowers assaulted him. There were countless precious plants that he saw, many of which he had never seen on the Martial Heaven continent. He also noticed marks of 11th-tier medicinal ingredients within the forest. 11th-tier medicinal ingredients were like divine medicines on the continent, but they were actually just randomly growing here as if they were no more than normal vegetation. Long Chen was growing more and more shocked by the foundation of this everlasting family. Ever since he had conned the continent's geniuses in Pill Valley, his wealth had soared, and he had thought that he would at least be able to compete with these ancient powers in terms of money. However, upon arriving here, he found that he was no more than a local bandit. His eyes were opened to the world. Mr. Long Chen, I can only bring you here. I'm not qualified to enter past here. If you need anything, you can activate your tablet, and someone will immediately come to assist you. After arriving at a small gate, the attendant guiding him stopped. Many thanks. Long Chen cupped his fists in thanks and walked in. Once inside, he sensed an even more ancient air than what he had felt outside. It was like this space had sealed the boundless laws of the heavenly Taos. Even though Long Chen wasn't an Empyrean, he could sense a bit of it. No wonder the Alliance had made me come here. This place probably has a formation that sealed some of the energy of the ancient era. In such an environment, one can gain insight into some of the lost aspects of the heavenly Taos. Regretfully, it's useless to me. Long Chen shook his head. Everyone said that the current Martial Heaven continent had declined. Not only had the spiritual qi in the air grown sparse, but even the laws of the heavenly Taos had started to become incomplete. So the experts of the current generation on the continent were looked down upon by the experts of the ancient era. Long Chen had no choice but to admit that these disciples from the ancient powers were truly stronger than the current disciples of the Martial Heaven continent. Within the same realm, their auras were much stronger. Their auras felt fuller as if they were bigger. The Martial Heaven continent's disciples felt like malnourished children in comparison. There was a qualitative difference between their auras. These fellows were smart. Seeing the martial heaven continent start to decline, they concealed themselves, sealing a portion of the ancient heavenly Tao energy, scrimping and saving through some tough days. But now that the continent has declined, for them to come out once more, they're instantly at the peak. Long Chen could only sigh. Those old fellows had made a brilliant move. Whenever a supreme figure appeared amongst their disciples, they would send them to the martial heaven continent for tempering, and if they were able to reach the point of dominating everyone within the same generation and being unrivaled, they would immediately be sealed. Sealing a peerless expert like that cost an enormous amount of resources. Even these ancient hidden sects weren't able to afford it so easily. So whenever such a peerless genius appeared in one generation, those ancient powers would essentially stop raising the other disciples in the same generation. Their limited resources had to go into maintaining their bloodline. They were like hibernating animals, just waiting for the great era to come. Now that the great era had truly come, they were spending all their money, doing everything they could to raise the disciples they had. Before the chi flow eruption, all those slumbering monsters would be awakening. There was no longer any need for them to preserve their resources. They were going all out. Long Chen's guess was that places like the Soul Harmony Courtyard were normally hidden and concealed, treated like absolute treasures. However, now it was taken out as a show of the family's power. Long Chen looked at the map and found that this Soul Harmony Courtyard could be treated as its own world. There were many spectacles to see. Following the path, he passed by a mountain stream. The trickling water was clear enough for him to see the bottom, and he saw fish happily swimming inside. These are boneless koi. Seeing the rainbow-colored fish, Long Chen's heart skipped a beat. This was a miraculous fish, on the same level as his scarlet blood spirit fish. However, the boneless koi were not to be eaten. What was special was their gallbladders. They were so bitter that upon consuming them, it would allow a person to experience all the bitterness of the world. It allowed a person to view the world from another angle, to comprehend another aspect of life. It had a great cleansing effect on a person's mental realm. Although he knew that the everlasting family was intentionally showing off a bit, Long Chen had no choice but to admit that they had succeeded. They really had good stuff. Looking left and right and seeing that there were no people, Long Chen had an urge to jump down and take a few. However, the reason these fish could survive was related to this water. If he put them in the primal chaos space with the scarlet blood spirit fish, they probably wouldn't survive. I, Long Chen, am not such a person. Long Chen comforted himself and turned away, doing his best not to look at the boneless koi again. Continuing, he grew even more shocked. The pavilions built in this area were all made of divine materials. They were overwhelmingly extravagant. He didn't run into anyone as he walked, making him take a second look at the map. He realized that he had ended up in an extremely secluded space. This was someone else's territory, so using divine sense to look around was definitely taboo. That was why each person was given a map. Long Chen looked more closely at the map and saw that a nearby place was marked with a name, the Heavenly Music Stone. Long Chen walked over to that location and saw that it was a mountain peak. There was a strangely shaped rock located within the trees there. This stone looked like a lotus flower throne. There was a large stone egg on it. This egg had natural Tao runes on it that were constantly moving. At the same time as those runes flowed, the music of the grand Tao filled the air. That sound was like buzzing, without any rhythm. However, by paying close attention, one could hear the pentatonic scale within it. Although it couldn't be called a beautiful sound, it pierced people's hearts. It struck a chord within Long Chen's heart. The 7 emotions of joy, anger, worry, longing, sorrow, fear, and shock all welled up within him at the same time. At that moment, he no longer felt like a cultivator, but a normal person. The 5 notes led to the 7 emotions, which activated the 6 senses. This music of the Grand Tao was transmitted through them all, seeming to contain the essence of heaven and earth. It was like the heartbeat of the world. If you could listen to it long enough, you might be able to see the mysteries of the world. The Grand Tao is formless, giving birth to heaven and earth. The Grand Tao is emotionless, moving the sun and moon. the Grand Tao is nameless, nourishing all life. The Grand Tao is actually simple. Everything in this world has its own Tao, with no Tao better than the last. Greed is what blinds people, and with the leaf in front of them, they don't see the mountain behind it. Long Chen unconsciously sighed, his heart filled with emotions. People pursued the Grand Tao, when every leaf, every tree beside them was the Tao. Everything was the Tao. Even if there was nothing there, it was the Tao as well. As for making a distinction between the Tao, saying some were minor and some were major, that was just laughable, wishful thinking. This kind of comprehension is worthy of the world's current #1 expert. Just at this moment, a gentle voice rang out, and a figure appeared behind Long Chen. Long Chen turned to see a white-robed woman. This was the mysterious woman that had appeared when he had killed the experts of the mechanism sect. Every time she took a step, a ripple would appear on top of the ground as if she was walking on top of the water. There were also ripples in the air as if she was currently within a waterfall. Despite being so close, she seemed to be far away. It was both mysterious and holy. She always appeared silently without Long Chen being able to sense her presence. This was Long Chen's first time encountering such a terrifying expert. However, Long Chen had the utmost confidence in the 9-star He-Gem body art. The reason he couldn't sense her was because she had no hostility toward him. "I've made you laugh. A coarse man like me is not worthy of a fairy's praise. Also, please don't bring up that title of the #1 expert. I don't want to get beaten up by others who want that title." Long Chen shrugged helplessly. So many monsters had appeared, and this world was no longer the same. Who knew just how many people had set their sights on being #1? Long Chen wasn't afraid of people, but as for fighting to death over some meaningless title, that was stupid. The woman smiled and walked closer. The waterfall around her slowly dissipated, revealing her true appearance. She had willowy eyebrows and almond eyes, a jasper nose and cherry lips. Her skin was white with a hint of rosiness. Her eyes in particular seemed to contain watery fluctuations as if they could melt a person within them. In terms of pure looks, she was definitely a beauty, but she wasn't as flawless as Meng Qi, Ling Yuan, and Yu Shaoqian. However, she possessed a gentleness to her that made people have an automatic urge to protect her to the death. "This little one is Nangong Zuiyue. I'm sorry for not introducing myself last time, Mr. Long Chen." You are the Nangong family's top genius?" Long Chen was startled. The 4 everlasting families were only going to send their top experts to this gathering. For her to be surnamed Nangong, she was definitely the Nangong family's top expert. "I wouldn't dare to call myself such a thing. I was just born at the wrong time. There wasn't a genius like Mr. Long Chen in my era," said Nangong Zuiyue. Please don't say such a thing. Really, you're going to give me a big head?" Long Chen waved his hand. It was better to be low-key here, rather than bragging to the point that he ended up slapping his own face. Just at this moment, rumbling rang out behind him, and a sharp aura pierced toward his shoulder. It came suddenly, like a wild storm. Long Chen hadn't expected to encounter an attack here. It was so sharp that it made his hair stand on end before it even reached him. The attack came without him having sensed anything before. With a cold snort, he smashed his fist behind him, not even looking. However, what shocked him was that his attack struck nothing. The seemingly sharp attack was completely void, filled with only empty might. Even before the attack arrived, it had naturally dissipated. Long Chen had actually been fooled. He had been unable to tell that this was a fake attack before countering. It was very dangerous. Your reactions are quick, and your power is strong enough. But your head's a bit slow. Just at this moment, a tall woman came walking over. She had a pair of exceptionally long legs that were very attention-grabbing, and she wore black leather armor that set off her body. Although Long Chen had seen beautiful women, it was his first time seeing a woman wearing such brazen and spicy clothing. She had red hair that looked naturally curly, which framed her delicate face. However, the corners of her mouth were slightly raised, giving her a prideful and fierce appearance. Her arms were bare, but there were white runic lines that were slowly fading at this moment. Due to her snow-white skin, It was impossible to see those lines without looking closely. These were clearly the marks left behind by her previous attack. Her skin-tight leather armor seemed to barely be able to stop her chest from bursting out. As she walked toward him, Long Chen learned another meaning for the term surging waves. This extremely fiery woman had clearly launched that attack to test Long Chen. When Long Chen looked at her, he instantly recognized her. She had been the woman on the 3-foot golden crow that had flown by, almost causing his flying boat to flip. At that time, he had only seen her back. Now that she was standing in front of him, he found that she was barely an inch shorter than him. It was mostly her long legs that gave her that advantage. "Have I offended you in some way?" Long Chen frowned. This woman gave him a strong sense of danger. That bow behind her in particular had a terrifying aura. "Beitang Rushuang, if you want to target me, you shouldn't attack others. That will damage the prestige of the Beitang family," said Nangong Zuiyue before this new woman said anything. "Beitang?" Long Chen's heart shook. So this woman was also from an everlasting family. "You're so protective of him already? Could it be that your frozen heart has finally been moved? Wow, I didn't think that this little fellow was so amazing. He was actually able to make the fairy Zuiyue, who once toppled the continent's geniuses and infatuated countless men, so protective of him. I should take a closer look." Beitang Rushuang actually began to circle Long Chen, seeming to want to find something special about him. That feeling of being stared at by such a terrifying yet alluring woman made even Long Chen feel unnatural. But just who was Long Chen? When it came to immoral behavior? "Excuse me, young lady, you're acting like a mosquito looking for a good piece of flesh to bite. If you keep looking, I'll have to charge a fee," said Long Chen sternly. "Haha." Beitang Rushuang was first startled, but then she laughed. The surging waves dazzled Long Chen's eyes. "Young lady? Little fellow, you are that fellow called Long Chen, right? Do you know how much bigger we are than you?" Looking at Beitang Rushuang's fiery attire, he asked, "Much bigger? That would depend on what we're comparing." Nangong Zuiyue's expression twitched. Originally, she had thought Long Chen to be a wise and elegant man due to the words he had said upon hearing the heavenly music here. But as soon as Beitang Rushuang came, he became a scoundrel. "I'll go look around somewhere else. I won't disturb the two of you any longer." Nangong Zuiyue bowed slightly and turned to leave. "Hold it." Beitang Rushuang suddenly blocked her path. Upon looking at Nangong Zuiyue, her smile vanished. "Nangong Zuiyue, what do you think you're doing by constantly avoiding me? You came 800 years before me, and I didn't get to see the period when the Nangong family's glory was at the peak. After I was born, I killed countless enemies and avenged my family's enmities. I wanted to fight with you, but you were already sealed. I had no choice but to be sealed as well with my regrets. Now that the great era has come and we've been awakened at the same time, you've refused my challenges over and over again. But are you looking down on me?" Divine runes began to surge within Beitang Rushuang's eyes, and the bow on her back began to rumble. Her battle intent caused the heavens to change color. Although she hadn't even taken off her bow, there seemed to be some invisible energy pulling back the bowstring. Battle was imminent. As if not seeing Beitang Rushuang's hostility, Nangong Zuiyue maintained a calm and indifferent appearance. The Beitang and Nangong families had some misunderstandings back then. Those matters are already in the past. There's no need for the previous generation's enmities to fall on us to settle. If you simply wanted to exchange pointers to corroborate our doubts, I would welcome you. But if it's because of vengeance, then I'm not interested." "You are running," said Beitang Rushuang coldly. "I suppose. The world is filled with fighting and troubles. Why bother adding more for myself? My heart has always been focused on cultivation, searching for the Tao of life, unraveling the mysteries of heaven and earth. As for everything else, I'm not interested," said Nangong Zuiyue, still as gentle as water. It was as if she would never get angry. "Stop acting so hypocritical. Do you not know what the Nangong family did back then? I did everything to cultivate so that I could defeat you one day and show the world that anyone who harms my Beitang family will pay a price. Nangong Zuiyue, no matter how you dodge me, you won't escape. I cultivate to defeat you. Although you say that the previous generation's enmities shouldn't be carried by us, Your generation will have to reap the seed planted by them. That is karma. This place is the Dongfang family's, so I won't force you here. But be clear, you might be able to dodge me the first time, but you won't be able to dodge me forever. There will sooner or later be a battle between us, said Beitang Rushuang. To the side, Long Chen was startled. It seemed that there was some unresolvable enmity between the Nangong family and the Beitang family. Well, all this had nothing to do with him. To avoid being drawn into a fight between behemoths, he began to slip away. Stop right there. He had just been slipping away when Beitang Rushuang shouted at him. Ah well, your enmities aren't for an outsider like me to get involved in. I wouldn't want to be killed to keep my mouth quiet. Long Chen hastily drew lines between him and the two of them. My enmity with her can be put aside for now. That thing you said, the Grand Tao is formless, giving birth to heaven and earth. The Grand Tao is emotionless, moving the sun and moon. The Grand Tao is nameless, nourishing all life. Where did you hear that? Or did you come up with it yourself? Asked Beitang Rushuang, temporarily ignoring Nangong Zuiyue. This Beitang Rushuang was capable of raising enmities and dropping them so easily. All that tension and hostility vanished in an instant. Actually, I was just randomly bragging. You don't have to take it seriously, said Long Chen. These words had simply popped out of him naturally due to what he had felt from the music. It had touched him in the deepest part of his soul. However, there was no need for him to admit to such a thing. These people here were all monsters, and he didn't want to embarrass himself. Bragging badly might end with him being exposed. Nangong Zuiyue frowned. She looked at Long Chen oddly, examining him once more. His way of talking was rather vulgar, especially when he was in front of women. Then continue bragging. I want to hear it. On the other hand, Beitang Rushuang didn't mind. She stared deeply into Long Chen's eyes as if wanting to see through his soul. Miss, if you look at me so closely, I'll get embarrassed. It's just regretful, Long Chen suddenly sighed. What's regretful? Asked Beitang Rushuang. It's regretful that my home already has a heroic woman that doesn't let me touch other flowers. Otherwise, I might lose my life when I return. Long Chen looked exceptionally bitter. Actually, with your talent and beauty, as long as you work a bit harder and take some more initiative, perhaps I might be moved by you. But we were simply born at the wrong time. I already have someone in my heart and can't add you in, so all we can do is look at each other longingly. But don't be dejected. I'm sure you will eventually find your own fated partner. Just forget about me and find someone better. Take care. Long Chen bitterly turned and left. Then his bitter expression vanished and he hastily slipped away. Nangong Zuiyue and Beitang Rushuang simply stood there in stunned silence for a few seconds. They were the peerless geniuses of their time and had seen countless heroes. But it was their first time encountering someone like this. Get back here. Just as Long Chen thought that he had escaped, Beitang Rushuang suddenly took a single step forward, appearing behind him and dragging him back. Beitang Rushuang caught Long Chen, a disbelieving expression on her face. When I dominated my generation, I saw countless heroes and killed countless villains. But I never saw anyone as shameless as you. Tell me, just how did you get to be so shameless? Beitang Rushuang was a generation's genius. Before being sealed, no one on the entire continent in her generation had been able to match her. Her experience was even greater than what others could accumulate over several lifetimes. However, even someone like her had never encountered someone like Long Chen before. Based on Long Chen's tone, it was like she was the one pursuing him, while he was being a proper gentleman and not giving in. Just when had she expressed the slightest intention in this regard? How could someone be so shameless? Actually, I'm not really shameless. There's a fellow called Emonian who's even more shameless than me. Miss, I'll tell you the truth. I'm simply too attractive to women. I don't even know how many pretty girls have spilled blood to pursue me. But my home is already full, and I can't have any more. Truly, I'm doing this for your own good. I can't give you the happiness that you long for. Long Chen sighed. How shameless. When did I ever say that I liked you? When it comes to looks, that Dongfang Yuyang is 10 times more handsome than you, said Beitang Rushuang. She looked Long Chen up and down pitifully. The main thing is that I'm different from him. My outer appearance is the weakest part of my charisma. We shouldn't discuss it any longer. Miss, it would be best if you distanced yourself from me. Have you not heard of a certain phrase circulating in the continent? What phrase? Be careful of leaving your daughters near Long Chen, sighed Long Chen. He looked up at the sky with a melancholy expression. When it comes to shamelessness, there has never been someone able to compare to you. Just what is so attractive about you? I don't see anything. Beitang Rushuang still couldn't believe that Long Chen was so shameless. Was he really the top genius of his generation? Even Nangong Zuiyue was shaking her head. Although she and Beitang Rushuang were from different generations, they had both been the most outstanding figures of their time. They had vast experience. However, Long Chen was something they had never encountered. Someone at the peak of their generation always had their own pride, but they didn't see any of the qualities of a peerless genius from Long Chen. He seemed much more like a slippery scoundrel. Miss, listen to my advice. Take advantage of this time while you haven't been seduced by my charisma to run. Otherwise, it will be too late for regret, said Long Chen sadly. Teach, when it comes to looks, you aren't at the level of shaking heaven and earth. In terms of cultivation base, the early life star realm is just average. Your reaction speed was also just so-so. You weren't even able to tell that my attack was a fake in time. If we had really been fighting, I would have a whole new level of respect for you if you could even last 100 exchanges. Looks, average, cultivation base, average, battle power, average. Someone as ordinary as you, tell me just where does your confidence come from? Asked Beitang Rushuang. Actually, I'm not sure about my own charisma either. Look, just how amazing is a peerless genius like you? But for some reason you're holding on to me, not letting me go. Why is that? Said Long Chen. You're vile. Beitang Rushuang was disgusted. Long Chen had actually taken her actions to be romantic? She had an urge to beat him. Goodbye. As soon as Beitang Rushuang released him, he said goodbye and slipped away for good. That appearance of his was like he was worried Beitang Rushuang would continue her romantic pursuit for him. Beitang Rushuang was ashen with rage. When she had dominated the continent, any man who saw her would become respectful, some even expressing their love. It was her first time encountering someone like Long Chen who actually seemed afraid that she would fall for him. He's a scoundrel plus an idiot. That was Beitang Rushuang's appraisal. It wouldn't be easy for anyone else to leave behind such a deep impression on you. But Long Chen has done it. Nangong Zuiyue merely said one thing before also leaving. Nangong Zuiyue, stop trying to change the subject. When will you accept my challenge? Shouted Beitang Rushuang. Sorry, I'm really not interested. Nangong Zuyue's voice rang out in the distance. She had already vanished. Long Chen had escaped and Nangong Zuiyue had left. The only one left in front of the heavenly music stone was Beitang Rushuang. The heavenly music stone was still rumbling, but it was unable to draw any of her attention. That Long Chen is definitely a scoundrel playing some kind of psychological game. He dares to tease me? Good Long Chen, you're quite brazen. Beitang Rushuang snorted and turned to leave. However, just at this moment, she heard some strange footsteps. Turning around, she saw a thin green-robed man, and her eyes narrowed. There was both a hint of fear and disdain in her eyes. The legendary fairy Rushuang of the Beitang family is even more beautiful than the legends say. That thin man smiled at Beitang Rushuang. He was so thin that he appeared sickly, and his face was too pale. Even the heavenly Tao fluctuations around him weren't as strong as other people. Get rid of your perverted eyes, or I'll carve them out of your head, said Beitang Rushuang irritably. Don't say that. As the top geniuses of our era, I feel like this kind of respect is simply required. Dongfang Yuyang doesn't know how to organize events properly. How did he allow any random person to attend? If people knew someone like you was coming, they would have probably decided not to come, snorted Beitang Rushuang before leaving. This person was Zhao Wuji of the infamous Mechanism Sect. The Mechanism Sect was a scourge of the cultivation world, and they had been surrounded and destroyed several times throughout history. However, their mechanisms were truly terrifying. Even though their sect had been destroyed, They would always revive from the ashes, and every time, they would undertake a bloody reprisal. They were a sect that changed the face of the cultivation world. Despite that, the Mechanism sect did not dare to offend the everlasting families. That was why Beitang Rushuang was a bit afraid of him while still not giving him the slightest face. Zhao Wuji suddenly called out, "Fairy Rushuang, may I ask if you've seen a little fellow called Long Qin?" Beitang Rushuang was startled. Looking back, she asked, "Are you looking for him?" Although she was very dissatisfied with Long Qin, she was curious why Zhao Wuji would mention him. "Ah, I didn't expect you to know him. Could it be that you?" Zhao Wuji probed. Beitang Rushuang snorted. "Don't play this kind of game with me. I don't know him, so answer my question." "Oh, then that's good. Just now I heard that Long Qin had come here, so I came to take a look and ask him just what kind of confidence he has to dare kill the disciples of my Mechanism sect. He killed 7 of them at once, with 3 being awakened Empyreans. I want to see just how tough his neck is," said Zhao Wuji. The Mechanism sect might be used to running rampant, but they didn't dare to go too far when it came to the everlasting families. If Long Qin really had a connection with the Beitang family, then he wouldn't have said things so directly. Long Qin killed people from the Mechanism sect? Haha, not bad, maybe he does have some attractive points, laughed Beitang Rushuang. The Mechanism sect was like a tumor of the cultivation world, but it was impossible to get rid of it. Even the everlasting families didn't want to provoke them, with other sects being even more afraid of them. It was unexpected that as soon as the Mechanism sect came back out into the world, 7 of their disciples would immediately be killed. 3 of them were even Empyreans with awakened manifestations. Long Qin's guts were truly big. Beitang Rushuang had personally experienced just how vile the Mechanism sect was back in her time. However, due to her family status, she had been unable to attack the Mechanism sect, while the Mechanism sect did not dare to be rude to her. They had never given her an excuse to act against them. Killing a few of their experts had always been one of her dreams. Unexpectedly, Long Qin had dared to kill their people. Hence, her opinion of Long Qin instantly rose. Zhao Wuji's expression changed slightly at Beitang Rushuang's reaction. That kind of delight at their loss was irritating. Long Qin's just a minor character from a declined era, but he dares to be so arrogant. Since he has no connection with your Beitang family, it'll be easy to handle. I'll make him regret being born in this world, said Zhao Wuji coldly. The Mechanism sect never cared about the means. When it came to cruelty, they might even surpass the corrupt path. That's your matter. Don't involve me. Beitang Rushuang snorted. She had admitted that Long Qin had no connection with her Beitang family. Zhao Wuji was saying this so that she didn't meddle in their affairs. I wonder just who's stronger, you or Long Qin? As she left, a hint of anticipation appeared in her eyes. It seemed that there would be a good show to watch. Having escaped Beitang Rushuang, Long Qin sighed with relief. Whether it was Beitang Rushuang or Nangong Zuiyue, they were both powerful figures with major backgrounds. Furthermore, it seemed that there was some intense enmity between their 2 families. Hence, Long Qin didn't want to get drawn into their muddled waters. So avoiding those 2 was definitely a smart decision. He didn't want Beitang Rushuang to think that he had some relationship with Nangong Zuiyue. If he ended up having to fight Beitang Rushuang over such a thing, that would be a miserable affair. The reason he spoke like that was to make the 2 of them look down on him. With their experience, they wouldn't feel hatred toward him over such a minor matter, but they definitely wouldn't bother him anymore in the future. At least, that was his goal. After going to the Heavenly Music Stone, Long Qin's heart was a bit uneasy. The Dongfang family's foundation was truly terrifying. If only he could have taken that stone. The music it released was the music of the Grand Tao. It was extremely beneficial to anyone attempting to comprehend the heavenly Taos. It was no wonder the everlasting families possessed so many geniuses and awakened Empyreans. It was no coincidence. Perhaps even if the Great Era hadn't come, their foundation would have allowed them to create an awakened Empyrean anyway. Compared to those ancient powers, he found that his newfound wealth, which might have made him the richest man on the continent, was now nothing. The resources that these people controlled were many times greater than all the resources on the continent. Seeing spectacle after spectacle, Long Chen was amazed. The power of the everlasting families was astounding. "Hello, can I ask if you're here to attend the auction?" Long Chen was lost in thought when one of the Dongfang family's attendants came over to him. Only then did Long Chen realize that he had arrived at the auction area without even noticing. There was an ancient palace here, with a dozen of the Dongfang family's disciples in front of its gates. "Ah, how do I participate in the auction?" Long Chen truly was interested. "The auction starts tomorrow. Other than some precious objects our Dongfang family are auctioning, anyone who wishes to participate can take out their treasures for us to auction off on their behalf. This auction is non-profit, and the purpose is mostly for communication amongst the heroes who have come. Whoever puts up a treasure will get 100% of the bid. Furthermore, the Dongfang family guarantees that no harm will come to your treasures. Our goal is simply to enrich this gathering, and if you have any suggestions or requests, simply ask and we will do our best," said the attendant. Long Chen instantly understood that the reason the Dongfang family was so eagerly holding this gathering of past and present heroes was not to make a profit, but to raise their level of fame. They were fine losing money in exchange for that fame. They were definitely successful. The entire world now knew of the Dongfang family's name. In fact, there was even a feeling that the Dongfang family was at the top of the everlasting families. "Can you give me a description of how it will be held? For example, what level of treasures will be present, and is the price in spirit crystals?" asked Long Chen. "All right, so what will happen is..." Through that disciple's explanation, Long Chen learned that this auction's currency was not spirit crystals but something called underworld spirit beads. Long Chen couldn't help being shocked upon hearing that. Underworld spirit beads were divine treasures capable of assisting in a nether passage expert's cultivation. It was said that where the world of life met the world of death, something called underworld spirit rock could form. The underworld spirit beads were refined from that rock. This kind of thing was extremely rare in the current world. It was basically impossible to find one. Only sects with extremely ancient inheritances could have managed to preserve a few. Long Chen had once heard Chu Jianying say that the leaders of the Martial Heaven Alliance were only qualified to take out 3 underworld spirit beads. As for Chu Jianying herself, she hadn't been willing to use those treasures herself. Although she hadn't said why she was unwilling, when Long Chen had seen her expression at that time, he could tell that she was preparing to leave them to the old man. However, then the old man had managed to break through to the Nether Passage realm himself, and Chu Jianying had accepted Yi Lingshan as her apprentice. She was most likely going to leave those 3 underworld spirit beads to Yi Lingshan. Chu Jianying only had 3 of the underworld spirit beads. As for the old man, Li Tianxian, the old patriarch, none of them were qualified to use them. From this, it could be seen just how valuable the underworld spirit beads were. It was said that the life and death energy within the underworld spirit beads could allow a life star expert to grow infinitely closer to breaking through to the Nether Passage realm. In the current world, it was a treasure that no money could buy. However, in the Dongfang family, the underworld spirit beads were actually treated as the base currency for an auction. That caught Long Chen off guard. Through her explanation, Long Chen also learned that here, if the underworld spirit beads were exchanged for spirit crystals, it would be around 1 billion spirit crystals for 1 underworld spirit bead. But that was just a saying. In truth, no one would ever trade underworld spirit beads for spirit crystals. They would only trade them for different treasures. In the eyes of these people, spirit crystals were a low-level currency. "May I ask if Mr. Long Chen has any treasures he wishes to auction?" "Ah, it seems that I'm too poor to bring out anything good." Long Chen could only smile bitterly. Compared to these ancient monsters, he was truly too poor. Mr. Long Chen must be joking. A genius like you is definitely blessed with great karmic luck. All kinds of treasures will automatically come to accept you as master. If you were to call yourself poor, then disciples like myself wouldn't even have the courage to continue living. Don't worry, we guarantee to protect whatever treasures you wish to bring out. Whether it sells or not, no one will know they came from you, promised the attendant, thinking that Long Chen was worried about being recognized based on what he wanted to auction off. Her suspicions of his misgivings were naturally mistaken. Where was Long Chen's karmic luck? It was more like he was blessed with all the world's bad luck. There was really nothing that Long Chen could take out that was as valuable as the underworld spirit beads. If he took something only worth half a bead, wouldn't he be laughed at? He flipped through his treasures. Evil Moon was definitely a treasure, and the fragment of the Eastern Wasteland Bell was as well. However, even if he was beaten to death, he couldn't bring them out to auction. There were the divine pillars from the Brahma Divine Palace as well, but it seemed that even they weren't worthy of being traded for underworld spirit beads. As for those 2 statues he had taken from the palace, they were treasures, as according to Evil Moon, the stone that they were made out of was extremely rare. But Long Chen couldn't sell them yet because they were filled with divine energy that Evil Moon and the heaven-flipping seal were going to absorb. The reason that they couldn't absorb it yet was because they were still absorbing energy from the divine pillars. Only once they were strong enough could they absorb the energy within the statues. I truly have nothing valuable to take out. Please let me consider this matter more, said Long Chen. That's fine as well. I know that every expert has their own secrets and taboos. The auction is tomorrow and starts at noon. Don't miss it, because all kinds of marvels will be appearing, and they will definitely interest you. The attendant was only slightly disappointed that Long Chen wouldn't bring out his treasures to auction. The more treasures there were, the better. This was naturally the hope of the Dongfang family after inviting so many monsters from the ancient era. They wanted this auction to be as marvelous as possible, and perhaps there would even end up being something that their Dongfang family needed. Long Chen wasn't the only one to decline offering up anything as treasures. All these supreme experts had their own trump cards and treasures. But ordinary ones weren't worth taking out, and the valuable ones were too important for them to part with. Or perhaps some of their treasures had unclear origins, and they didn't want to cause any trouble. Some of those people that refused also said that they were poor. For them, it was just an excuse, but for Long Chen, it was the truth. Leaving the auction area, Long Chen felt bitter. It was his first time feeling so poor since he had stepped out into the cultivation world. Those spirit crystals that he had plundered had already been given to Qian Duo to equip the Dragonblood Legion. As for Long Chen himself, he hadn't kept that much. With the auction tomorrow, just what was he supposed to do? Just watch as those marvelous treasures were bought by others? I can't plunder these as well, right? Long Chen suddenly had a thought, but then he shook his head. With the monsters here, who knew just who would be plundering who in the end? After leaving the auction area, he had another thought. There was a trading area he could go to. The trading area was for experts who had taken out their treasures and put down what they wanted to exchange them for. If anyone had what they wanted, they could directly trade. Thinking of that, Long Chen wasn't even in the mood to look at more of the scenery. He went directly to the trading area. The trading area was at the peak of a mountain. There was a giant stone cliff here that soared into the sky. There were 1-meter stone platforms arranged in front of the cliff. Each platform emitted divine light, protecting a treasure that was lying within. The first thing that Long Chen saw was an ancient spear. It was covered in blood runes, with each rune emitting a fearsome aura. Altogether, it was like millions of magical beasts were roaring within it. He was about to go examine the spear more closely when he suddenly saw the object beside it. His heart began to pound wildly. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.